History is filled with unanswered questions, enigmas that refuse to fade no matter how much time passes. Lost civilizations, unexplained disappearances, and artifacts that defy logic, each one a thread in a tapestry of mysteries that have baffled scholars for centuries. What happened to the greatest minds of the past? Why did entire societies vanish without a trace? The truth is out there, but it remains hidden, just beyond our grasp. So sit back, relax, and let's journey into the heart of these unsolved mysteries, where the answers are as elusive as the stories themselves. The sun beats down on the quiet, arid hills of Deir el-Bahari, the sprawling mortuary complex on the west bank of the Nile. This sacred site, nestled beneath the towering cliffs of the Theban mountains, is most famous for the imposing temple of Queen Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs in ancient Egypt's long history. Yet it's not just her magnificent temple that draws attention here. It's the mystery of the unknown Man E, an enigmatic figure whose identity and purpose have eluded scholars for over a century. To understand this puzzle, we must first step into the labyrinth of ancient Egypt's burial practices. The Valley of the Kings, a burial ground of royalty and elites, lies just across the river, but Deir el-Bahari is not far behind in its historical significance. This is a place where powerful figures, including the great Hatshepsut herself, were interred. It's a place where history and the afterlife were carefully intertwined in the minds of those who built these monumental tombs. In 1903, while excavating a cache of mummies in the area, archaeologist Edward Ayrton discovered a tomb that contained several royal mummies. Among them was a man, poorly preserved and wrapped in a simple linen shroud. His remains, identified only by a crude label reading Unknown Man E, have perplexed Egyptologists ever since. The lack of any clear markers of identity, no royal insignia, no name, has turned this man into one of the most intriguing and debated figures of ancient Egypt. Was he simply an unfortunate victim of history, forgotten by time, or was his presence here part of a grander, more complex narrative? Initial theories pointed to him being a member of the royal family, possibly a prince or an advisor to the throne. His age, when he died, somewhere between 30 and 40, suggests that he was not an elderly figure. His body showed signs of high status, the presence of linen wrappings that would have been reserved for the elite, and evidence of embalming rituals that were not commonly afforded to the common populace. Yet, despite these signs of importance, there were no identifying marks to confirm his royal lineage or his exact role in the court of Egypt's new kingdom. Some scholars have speculated that the unknown Man E may have been an early victim of political intrigue. Ancient Egypt was no stranger to palace coups and power struggles, and many royal tombs tell stories of kings who fell from grace or were violently removed from power. Was he the casualty of a bitter rivalry, or perhaps the victim of a usurpation that saw his name erased from history? One of the most intriguing possibilities suggests that this man could have been someone close to the throne, perhaps even a high-ranking official or royal confidant who, for reasons unknown, fell from favor. His tomb was discovered in the same cache as the remains of Pharaoh Amenhotep I, whose mummy had been hidden away in a cache to avoid desecration by tomb robbers. The proximity of the unknown Man E to Amenhotep I suggests that he might have been part of a later burial operation, perhaps a burial during a time of unrest when the royal family feared the desecration of their ancestors' tombs. Others believe that the man may have been a high-ranking official who served during the reign of a different pharaoh altogether. Given that many officials and priests were buried in Deir el-Bahari, the identity of the unknown Man E could be linked to the obscure world of Egypt's bureaucracy, where political figures often remained nameless or erased from historical records. He might have been a forgotten prince, a member of a family line that never ascended to the throne. Yet, for all the theories and conjecture, there remains a haunting silence around the identity of this man. Some have even gone so far as to suggest that the unknown Man E may not have been Egyptian at all. Was he perhaps a foreigner, an envoy, a warrior, or a diplomat from a distant land brought into Egypt's royal fold? His burial in the Valley of the Kings and his proximity to Egyptian royalty might suggest a role outside the confines of Egypt, a link between nations in an era long past. Was he perhaps a casualty of Egypt's political dealings with the lands to the south or to the east? Despite the various theories, no definitive answer has emerged. The absence of further identifying information about his tomb, such as inscriptions or a clear link to any known royal line, only deepens the mystery. Was he simply someone who fell out of favor, his name erased in the wake of political shifts? Or was his existence erased for another, even more mysterious reason? The mystery of the unknown Man E raises profound questions about how history remembers, or forgets, its figures. In the ancient world, the power of the elite was often maintained through the suppression of rival claims, the erasure of inconvenient truths. Could this man have been part of that great tradition of political erasure? And what of the tomb itself? Its quiet, empty mystery? Could there be other unknown figures whose stories remain buried beneath layers of sand and time? As we stand in the shadows of the grand Deir el-Bahari temple, looking out at the endless desert, we are reminded that not all stories from the past are meant to be uncovered. Some, it seems, are meant to remain a mystery. The truth of unknown Man E may still be hidden, locked away by time, politics, and perhaps a desire to keep certain truths from reaching the light. Perhaps the greatest question of all is this: what else from the ancient world remains lost to history, its story left untold, its name forgotten? As we delve deeper into history's hidden lies, we begin to uncover the stories of forgotten technologies, mechanisms, devices, and instruments that challenge our understanding of the ancient world. One of the most puzzling discoveries of all is the Antikythera mechanism, a fragmentary artifact found at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, whose very existence threatens to rewrite the timeline of human innovation. In 1901, a group of sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon a shipwreck deep beneath the waves. Among the relics they recovered, they found bronze fragments unlike anything they had ever seen before. It wasn't just a simple artifact or piece of jewelry. These were gears, complex, interlocking, and intricately crafted. The find was not just unusual, it was unprecedented. The artifact would soon be known as the Antikythera mechanism, and it would raise more questions than it would answer. The pieces of the mechanism, once recovered and painstakingly pieced together, revealed something astonishing: a sophisticated analog computer designed to predict astronomical positions, phases of the moon, and even the movements of the planets. Dating back to around 100 BC, this device was centuries ahead of its time. At least, that's what we've been told. The very concept of such a mechanism existing in an ancient world, a world that we often think of as primitive compared to our own, challenges our fundamental understanding of technological progress. How could a civilization so long ago craft something so advanced? For decades, historians and archaeologists have struggled to piece together its purpose. Early theories proposed that the Antikythera mechanism was simply an astrological device, an object used by ancient Greek astronomers to track the stars, the movements of the moon, and the positions of the planets. It's believed to have been housed in a small wooden case, likely operated by turning a hand crank, which powered a series of gears and dials that displayed the celestial events of the time. What makes the Antikythera mechanism truly remarkable, however, is not just its complexity, but the mystery surrounding its true purpose. While it was surely an astronomical calculator, its exact function remains unclear. Some experts believe it was used as a calendar to predict the timing of religious festivals, while others suggest it was a tool for navigation, helping sailors chart their course across the Mediterranean. Yet, the device's true purpose could have been far more sophisticated than we can imagine. Was it designed simply as a mechanical calculator? Or was it part of a much broader understanding of the cosmos, an ancient form of celestial navigation that was lost to time? Despite the advances of modern science and technology, the Antikythera mechanism continues to elude our complete understanding. Extensive scanning and imaging of the surviving fragments have revealed dozens of finely crafted gears, many of which still work in tandem to create a kind of mechanical harmony. The gears are so precise, so intricate, that their very existence suggests a level of craftsmanship that we might expect from the Renaissance, not from the ancient world. And yet, the object itself is thought to have been built over 2,000 years ago, in a time when the average person would have had no concept of mechanical precision on such a scale. So, what does this say about the ancient Greeks, or any ancient civilization for that matter? How could they possess the knowledge to create something so advanced? Was the Antikythera mechanism the product of a particularly advanced culture? Or could it have been the legacy of a forgotten civilization, one whose technological expertise has since vanished into the sands of time? As researchers have examined the mechanism in greater detail, they've raised even more unsettling questions. Some scholars have proposed that the design of the Antikythera mechanism was inspired by a much older tradition, perhaps from the East or from civilizations now lost to history. The device itself has elements that suggest knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and mechanical engineering that we typically associate with much later periods in history. Some even wonder if there was a lost connection between ancient Greece and other distant cultures, civilizations that might have possessed technologies far beyond what we would expect for their time. If such a thing were possible, it would rewrite the history of technological development. Could it be that ancient societies were more interconnected than we have been led to believe? Or could the existence of the Antikythera mechanism suggest that humanity had access to knowledge we have since forgotten, a wisdom that was lost to the cataclysms of history, buried beneath centuries of war, political upheaval, and natural disaster? There is, of course, the possibility that we are overestimating the capabilities of ancient engineers, projecting our own understanding of technology onto the past. But the precision of the Antikythera mechanism, its design, and its functionality demand a more nuanced explanation. This isn't a simple relic of a bygone era. It is a key to understanding a lost knowledge, one that is more complex and sophisticated than we have ever acknowledged. And then there is the matter of the missing pieces. The fragments we have today offer a mere glimpse of the original device, fragments that still harbor untold secrets. What was the full extent of the Antikythera mechanism's abilities? What knowledge was encoded into those gears that we have yet to uncover? It's possible that the missing pieces, the parts that were lost to time, the parts that have yet to be recovered, could provide the final piece of the puzzle. Could they unlock the true purpose of the device, or reveal an entirely new layer of mystery about its origins and use? As scientists and archaeologists continue to study the remaining pieces of the Antikythera mechanism, the unanswered questions only seem to multiply. What if we are only scratching the surface of a far deeper enigma? What might we find if we could recover the missing fragments of this ancient device? Or is it possible that the secrets of the Antikythera mechanism will remain locked away forever, leaving us to wonder about the true extent of ancient knowledge and the possibilities that may have been lost to time? The missing pieces of the Antikythera mechanism may hold the key to understanding a world far more advanced than we've ever imagined, or they may only deepen the mystery of what has already been lost. As we continue our exploration of history's most elusive truths, we turn our attention to a mystery that stretches across the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, a place where trade routes once flourished, connecting cultures, empires, and civilizations that spanned continents. Yet beneath the bustle of ancient commerce, there is a forgotten secret, a language lost to time, a trade language once spoken by sailors and merchants whose words echoed across the shores of Africa, Asia, and the Arabian Peninsula. Today, its traces are all but gone, but the questions surrounding its disappearance remain. Imagine the Indian Ocean, its warm waters stretching out in all directions, dotted with the islands and coasts of what are now Indonesia, India, the Arabian Peninsula, and East Africa. Centuries ago, this was the hub of one of the world's most extensive trading networks, a region where cultures collided, languages intertwined, and goods, from spices to textiles, from ivory to gold, flowed in every direction. At the heart of this bustling exchange was a trade language, a lingua franca, that facilitated communication between people who spoke no common tongue. A language so vital that without it, the trade routes may never have reached the heights they did. This language, scholars believe, was most likely a form of Pidgin or Creole, a simplified means of communication, born from the necessity of trade. It would have been a blend of words from the many languages spoken along the shores of the Indian Ocean, each adding elements of their own tongue, creating a hybrid that could bridge the gap between cultures. It was a language of commerce, one designed for the practicalities of trade, not for the rich nuances of literature or poetry. Yet, despite its importance, this language remains largely unrecorded, its speakers largely anonymous. The mystery surrounding this lost trade language begins with its very existence. While records from ancient historians, travelers, and merchants often mention the bustling trade across the Indian Ocean, there is little mention of the actual language that facilitated it. The earliest recorded instances of the language, fragmented as they are, appear in inscriptions and maritime logs that suggest a spoken language in use, but there is no definitive evidence of its structure or full vocabulary. No texts or scrolls, no great works of literature, no preserved dialogues. What we are left with are only whispers of its existence, carried through the accounts of those who sailed its waters. Some scholars suggest that this language was a tool of necessity, not one of cultural prestige. It may not have been written down because it was a practical, utilitarian language that didn't need to be. The merchants who spoke it would have been more concerned with completing their transactions, moving goods, and navigating the trade routes than with preserving a linguistic legacy. Perhaps, too, it was constantly evolving, changing from one port to the next, altering its form to suit the needs of those who spoke it. What we can surmise is that it was an incredibly dynamic and fluid language, designed for communication in the ever-shifting environment of global trade. Yet, as the centuries wore on, the need for such a language began to fade. With the rise of empires and the consolidation of power, new languages began to take root along the coasts of the Indian Ocean. Arabic, Persian, Tamil, and Swahili all became dominant languages of trade and culture, pushing the trade pidgin into the shadows. As new powers rose, the language of the merchants fell into disuse, its speakers dispersed or absorbed into larger, more influential communities, and with its decline, the language slipped from memory, no longer needed, no longer spoken, and eventually forgotten. But was it truly lost? Some researchers believe that while the trade language of the Indian Ocean might no longer have a name, its legacy might still linger in the languages that emerged from it. Swahili, the lingua franca of East Africa, is often pointed to as a possible descendant of this ancient trade language. With its complex mixture of Arabic, Bantu, and Persian influences, it stands as a testament to the melding of cultures and languages that once thrived across the Indian Ocean. Could the current languages of the Indian Ocean hold the vestiges of this lost tongue? If so, then perhaps the language was never truly lost, only transformed, evolving over time as the trade routes shifted and new empires emerged. Another theory suggests that the trade language was actually a much older form of communication, one that existed long before the more commonly known languages of the region came into prominence. Could it have been an indigenous language, spoken by coastal communities long before the first merchants arrived from far-off lands? This would imply that the trade language didn't just emerge in response to commerce. It could have been a linguistic bridge between long-established coastal peoples, their languages woven together in a shared tradition of exchange that had lasted for millennia. There is also the possibility that the trade language was much more widespread than we realize. Could it have reached parts of Southeast Asia, the Persian Gulf, or even the shores of China? The maritime Silk Road, which connected the East and the West, was an even more complex web of trade than many realize. If this trade language truly served as the glue holding disparate cultures together, what other corners of the world might it have touched? What other languages might carry traces of its influence? Perhaps the most perplexing question of all, though, is why such a vital language was left so poorly recorded. Why, in a time when great empires were building libraries and cataloging knowledge, was this trade language so deliberately erased from history? Was it simply a victim of its own practicality, a language that existed for a purpose and then faded away when that purpose no longer existed? Or could there have been forces at work, political, cultural, or even religious, aimed at silencing this language in favor of others that would better serve the interests of growing empires? The mystery of the lost trade language of the Indian Ocean remains unresolved. Whether its words were quietly absorbed into modern tongues, or whether they've truly vanished without a trace, we may never fully know. But what is certain is that it was a vital piece of the intricate web that connected ancient civilizations across vast distances. A language of the sea, born from the need to navigate not just the waters of the Indian Ocean, but the shifting tides of human history itself. As we peer into the depths of history, the question lingers: what else have we lost to time? What other languages, cultures, and stories have been swallowed by the vast ocean of history, never to be heard again? The mystery of the lost trade language of the Indian Ocean might only be a small fragment of a much larger, still unfolding puzzle. From the distant shores of the Indian Ocean, we now turn to an island far to the east, a place where time itself seems to have frozen in a moment of isolation and mystery. Easter Island, known to its indigenous people as Rapa Nui, is a remote speck in the Pacific Ocean, famous for its giant stone statues, the moai, that stand as silent sentinels on the island's volcanic slopes. But beneath the weight of these monolithic figures lies another enigma, an unsolved mystery that has confounded historians and linguists for centuries: the Rongorongo script. The island, a vast ocean away from any major landmass, holds a peculiar place in human history. In the 19th century, the first outsiders to step foot on its shores were astonished not just by the stone giants, but by the discovery of mysterious carvings. These symbols were etched into wooden tablets and bark, and they represented a form of writing unlike any other in Polynesia, or anywhere in the world, for that matter. The Rongorongo script is as cryptic as it is captivating. Comprising over 120 distinct characters, the script's exact origins, purpose, and meaning remain elusive to this day. What makes it particularly strange is that it doesn't resemble any known writing system in the ancient world. Unlike the hieroglyphs of Egypt, the cuneiform of Mesopotamia, or the characters of ancient China, Rongorongo does not show any obvious connection to other writing systems, either in form or structure. Its patterns are unique, its symbols enigmatic. And despite numerous attempts by researchers over the years, no one has definitively cracked the code. To fully appreciate the mystery of Rongorongo, we must first understand its context. Easter Island was once a thriving civilization, home to a complex society that built impressive stone structures and developed advanced agricultural techniques. But as history would have it, by the time Europeans arrived, much of this civilization had already begun to unravel. What had happened to the once flourishing society of Rapa Nui? Was it a gradual decline, a result of environmental degradation and internal conflict? Or was something more deliberate at play, an attempt to preserve knowledge in the face of collapse? The earliest known references to the Rongorongo script date back to the mid-19th century, when European explorers arrived on the island. It's believed that the script was already in use long before this period, with evidence suggesting that it may have been developed around the 12th century AD. But here's the crux of the mystery. Despite the evident importance of the script, it was only ever recorded on a handful of artifacts. These tablets, primarily made of wood, were discovered in the 19th century, but most were destroyed or lost during colonial exploitation and neglect. One of the most puzzling aspects of Rongorongo is that it appears to have been a script that was in use long after the island had been exposed to European contact. This raises an important question. How could such an isolated civilization, one that had already begun to decline, create and maintain a complex written system? And why, after its discovery by outsiders, did it seemingly disappear from the island's culture? As historians and linguists have worked to decode the symbols, several theories have emerged. One of the most widely accepted explanations is that the Rongorongo script was a kind of mnemonic device, a way for the island's leaders or priests to preserve oral traditions, genealogies, and religious stories. Perhaps it was used to record important events or rituals, a means of keeping history alive in a society that had no formal written language. Some have even speculated that it was a form of propaganda, used to solidify the power of the island's rulers by associating their lineage with divine or mythological forces. But then there's the question of why the script was so secretive. If it were simply a means of recording information, why wasn't it more widely disseminated? Why, for example, was it only carved onto wood, materials that would degrade over time? And why did the island's later generations fail to preserve or continue using the script? There is a theory, one that borders on the speculative, that suggests Rongorongo was not just a script, but a form of secret knowledge, perhaps even a form of written magic. Could it have been a way of encoding knowledge that was considered sacred or too powerful for ordinary people to understand? Was it meant to preserve esoteric wisdom from an earlier, perhaps even pre-Polynesian civilization that had once inhabited the island? And what of the tablets themselves? Were they meant to be read aloud as part of a ritual? Or were they purely symbolic, meant to be interpreted only by an elite few? These questions bring us to the core of the mystery. In the absence of further evidence, no historical texts, no corroborating sources, the answers remain speculative. The possibility that Rongorongo was a form of esoteric knowledge or a lost language with a unique cultural significance is tantalizing. Some even suggest that the script could represent an ancient connection between Easter Island and other parts of the Pacific, or even with distant cultures like the Incas, with whom the Rapa Nui may have had contact long before the arrival of Europeans. But perhaps the most unsettling question is one that haunts the study of Rongorongo. Was it ever truly meant to be understood by us at all? The loss of so many of the original tablets, along with the suppression of the culture by European colonial powers, has left us with little more than fragments. And in the centuries since, the script has largely faded from the island's collective memory, its meaning lost in the sands of time. Was it simply the victim of cultural erosion, or was it deliberately hidden away, perhaps to protect its knowledge from falling into the wrong hands? As we stand on the windswept shores of Easter Island, looking out over the Moai, silent witnesses to centuries of change, it's impossible not to wonder what else remains hidden from us. What secrets did the Rongorongo script encode, And why were they so carefully guarded? And what might we still be missing, even today, in the vast ocean of human knowledge? The mystery of Rongorongo is one that remains unsolved, a riddle that refuses to be unlocked. As we turn our gaze toward the future, the question lingers. Could the key to this forgotten language still be out there, waiting to be discovered? Or have we already lost it forever, its secrets forever shrouded by time? In the dense forests of northern Germany, nestled in the quiet folds of the Tollense Valley, lies a mystery that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient warfare. The valley itself is serene now, lush, with a meandering river cutting through the landscape and trees stretching high towards the sky. But beneath this peaceful facade, a discovery made in the 1990s would unearth something that turned our understanding of ancient history on its head. It began when archaeologists found fragments of human bones in the valley, scattered along the banks of the Tollense River. The pieces, at first dismissed as ancient remains, turned out to be part of something far more significant, an ancient battlefield where hundreds, perhaps thousands of individuals had fought and died. The bones, weapons, and artifacts found at the site suggested a large-scale conflict, one that defied our understanding of prehistoric societies. This was no mere skirmish. This was the discovery of what could be one of the earliest known battles in human history, dating back to around 1300 BC in the Bronze Age. The remains of over 130 individuals have been uncovered so far, and each discovery only deepens the mystery. What were these people doing in the middle of a forest, far from any known settlements or established cities? Why did they fight in such an organized and violent way? And who were they? The Tollense Valley, though geographically central in Europe, was hardly a place known for large-scale warfare in prehistoric times. Most of our understanding of Bronze Age societies revolves around small, localized tribes, scattered and largely isolated. But the evidence here suggests something different. The scale of the conflict, the sophisticated weapons, and the brutal nature of the injuries point to an army, or at least a force of combatants, unlike anything previously thought to exist in Europe at that time. The remains tell a violent tale. Many of the bodies found in the valley show signs of trauma: crushed skulls, broken bones, and puncture wounds from weapons like daggers and spears. Some of the individuals had been struck down while crossing the river, suggesting that the battle may have been fought in the very waters themselves. Others were found clustered together, indicating that they may have been part of a group fighting in close formation, possibly as part of a larger army. The evidence hints at an organized military conflict, complete with coordinated strikes, ambushes, and hand-to-hand combat. But here's the most perplexing part of the story. Despite the magnitude of the battle, no one has yet been able to identify who these people were. No signs of a known civilization or army have been found at the site. The weapons, while advanced for their time, don't match any specific culture in the region. In fact, the Tollense battlefield doesn't appear to fit into the established historical narrative at all. Some scholars suggest that the people involved in the battle might have come from a distant culture, one that had either migrated to the area or had an unexpected connection to the peoples of the Mediterranean or Near East. After all, the Bronze Age was a time of increased trade and cultural exchange across vast distances. Could these fighters have come from an area further south, perhaps from the regions around Palestine or the Aegean Sea, where civilizations were already making advances in warfare and technology? Another theory posits that the battle might have been the result of a tribal conflict, one of those rare moments in history when a localized clash escalates into a full-scale battle. In this case, it could have been the Tollense people, a group possibly unknown to history, fighting for control of resources, territory, or influence. But again, we are left to wonder, why were these people so well prepared for combat? Where did they acquire their weapons and military knowledge? The discovery of such a sophisticated battle challenges everything we know about the structure of Bronze Age societies. Historians have long believed that most Bronze Age cultures were relatively peaceful, with conflict limited to small raids or skirmishes. But the Tollense battlefield suggests that large, organized battles were not only possible in prehistoric Europe. They may have been common, even central to the way societies interacted. The Tollense Valley battle raises another tantalizing question. What was the purpose of the conflict itself? Was it a war of conquest, with one tribe seeking to expand its territory? Or was it more of a defensive action, an effort to protect what little land and resources remained in an increasingly competitive world? The sheer scale of the battle suggests that there was something at stake, something worth fighting for. And then there's the mystery of the river itself. The remains found near the waterline hint at a struggle that spanned across the river, with combatants on both sides of the water. The geography of the valley itself, with its winding river and dense forests, would have created a natural battleground, a place where ambushes, surprise attacks, and defensive tactics could be employed. Was the river merely a geographical feature, or did it have a symbolic role in the battle? Could the river have played a larger role in the conflict, perhaps tied to some kind of spiritual or ritualistic significance that we don't fully understand? Adding to the intrigue is the lack of clear answers. Why didn't the battle leave more obvious traces of its participants? Why were no major settlements found nearby? The lack of clear cultural markers only deepens the mystery. Were these combatants part of a larger empire, one we have yet to uncover in the historical record? Or were they a collection of disparate groups, fighting for their own reasons, and then disappearing into the annals of forgotten history? Some speculate that the battlefield could represent the final stand of a once powerful group, a moment when an entire society was destroyed in one fell swoop, its name lost to time. Others suggest that the fight may have been a precursor to the larger conflicts that would later shape the course of European history. Still, no theory fully answers the question of why such an extraordinary battle occurred in such a remote place, nor why it left so few clues about the identity of the combatants. The mystery of the Tollense Valley army remains unsolved, and as the bones and artifacts continue to surface from the earth, it seems clear that this discovery is just the beginning of a far larger enigma. What are we missing? What other ancient battles have been lost to the shifting tides of time? And how many other hidden histories are buried beneath the earth waiting to be uncovered, their stories still untold? From the lost armies of Tollense Valley, we now journey north toward the icy shores of Greenland, an island of stunning beauty and unforgiving landscapes. Its vast, barren expanses, where the wind howls and the ice stretches to the horizon, hold a story that has long captivated historians and archaeologists alike. The mysterious disappearance of the Norse settlers who once thrived here. In the late 10th century, the Viking explorer Eric the Red sailed westward, reaching the rugged shores of Greenland. He would establish the first Norse settlements, bringing with him a culture of exploration, trade, and expansion that would span the North Atlantic. For centuries, the Norse settlers on Greenland, known as the Greenlanders, built homes, raised livestock, and engaged in commerce with both Europe and the native Inuit peoples. But by the early 15th century, these settlements had vanished, their once thriving communities reduced to little more than scattered ruins. Today, the remnants of those settlements still stand, frozen in time, stone buildings, overgrown cemeteries, and farm sites slowly being reclaimed by the harsh Arctic climate. Yet, despite decades of excavation and research, the question remains: what happened to the Greenland Norse? Why did they disappear so abruptly, leaving behind no clear record of their fate? It's easy to think of the Norse as a people of warriors and adventurers, fearless explorers who carved out empires across Europe, the British Isles, and the North Atlantic. But the settlers of Greenland were not conquerors in the traditional sense. Rather, they were pioneers, settling in a land of ice and snow where survival was a constant struggle. They built farms and established trade routes, particularly for the highly prized walrus ivory, which was in demand throughout medieval Europe. For a time, the Greenland Norse were successful, their settlements flourishing despite the challenges of the environment. Yet, as the centuries wore on, things began to change. By the 14th century, the Greenland settlements were in decline, and by the 15th century, they were abandoned altogether. The traditional explanation for their disappearance points to a combination of factors: a cooling climate during the Little Ice Age, economic collapse, and the growing isolation of Greenland from the rest of Europe. As the climate grew colder, crops failed, livestock perished, and the once thriving communities were left struggling to survive. Meanwhile, the rise of the Inuit culture in Greenland, who were better adapted to the harsh environment, may have put additional pressure on the Norse settlements. But as we dig deeper, the answers begin to unravel. The idea that the Norse simply disappeared due to climate change and isolation doesn't seem to account for all the evidence. After all, the Inuit, despite facing similar climatic challenges, managed to thrive in Greenland. Could the Norse have faced a more complex set of challenges than we've been led to believe? What other factors may have contributed to their abrupt disappearance? One of the most perplexing pieces of the puzzle lies in the archaeological evidence itself. While it is true that the settlements gradually dwindled, many artifacts, such as church bells, tools, and weapons, suggest that the Greenland Norse continued to engage in trade and maintain their culture well into the 14th and 15th centuries. In fact, some records indicate that Greenland was still a part of the European medieval world, with regular contacts and trade missions to the island. Yet, despite this ongoing trade and communication, the settlements were abandoned almost entirely, without a clear record of why or how. In more recent years, a theory has emerged suggesting that the Norse settlers didn't disappear entirely, but simply integrated with the Inuit. Some historians propose that as conditions worsened, the Norse people, skilled in agriculture and European ways of life, may have sought out the Inuit, exchanging knowledge, goods, and even intermarrying. If true, this would mean that the story of the Norse in Greenland is not one of total disappearance, but of cultural assimilation, an eerie merging of two cultures, each of whom had learned to survive in a harsh and unforgiving environment. Yet the evidence for this theory remains thin. While there are some signs of interaction between the Norse and Inuit, such as shared hunting tools and artifacts, the degree to which the two groups coexisted or merged is unclear. Some researchers dismiss the idea of assimilation, arguing that the Norse were simply overwhelmed by the changing climate and isolation, while others suggest that the Greenlanders may have turned to internal conflicts or even a collapse of their social structure. Could the Norse settlers have simply given up, unable to adapt to the worsening conditions, and retreated into the icy wilderness? Another theory, one that borders on the speculative, is that the disappearance of the Greenland Norse was not due to environmental or social collapse, but to a more dramatic event, such as a violent conflict or even a catastrophic raid. Though there is little evidence to support this claim, some historians suggest that the Norse could have encountered a hostile force, perhaps from an unexpected source, that led to the rapid demise of their settlements. Was there a final, devastating attack from the Inuit, or another group, that wiped out the Greenland Norse in one fell swoop? Or did the settlers, desperate for survival, turn on each other, leading to a self-destructive conflict? The more we examine the disappearance of the Norse in Greenland, the more we realize how much remains shrouded in mystery. The traditional explanations, environmental collapse, economic decline, and social isolation, offer a plausible narrative, but they do not fully explain the abruptness of the disappearance. The Greenland Norse were not a people who simply faded into the cold Arctic night. They were a people who built settlements, maintained trade networks, and lived in one of the harshest environments on Earth. So why, after all their efforts, did they vanish without a trace? Perhaps the most haunting question lies in the absence of a clear record. The Norse, after all, were great record keepers, chronicling their journeys, their battles, and their conquests. And yet, there is no written account, no final letter, no desperate plea for help, no chronicle of the end of their civilization. Instead, we are left with the eerie silence of abandoned farms, the ruins of churches, and the scattered remnants of a culture that once thrived on the edge of the world. From the desolate ice sheets of Greenland, we now travel to a region of Central Asia, an area shaped by ancient empires, forgotten kingdoms, and lost cities. Here, beneath the surface of the tranquil waters of Lake Issyk-Kul, lies one of history's most intriguing mysteries. A city that once thrived, yet vanished without a trace. A place that, according to some, is still waiting to be rediscovered. Lake Issyk-Kul, located in modern-day Kyrgyzstan, is an awe-inspiring body of water. Surrounded by the snow-capped peaks of the Tian Shan Mountains, the lake is one of the largest saline bodies of water in the world, an ancient remnant of an even older waterway that once connected various civilizations of the Eurasian steppe. Its waters shimmer beneath the sun, reflecting the vast skies and towering mountains. But beneath the surface, it hides a story, one that has sparked curiosity and speculation for centuries. The mystery centers around the legend of a city that some believe lies submerged at the bottom of the lake. Ancient accounts, some dating back to the 8th century, speak of a grand city, an important hub of trade and culture that mysteriously disappeared, swallowed by the very lake it was built beside. Known in local folklore as Khan's City, or the City of Gold, the story of its disappearance has been passed down through generations. Yet, despite numerous attempts to find this city, its exact location and fate remain a mystery. Could it have truly existed, or is it simply the stuff of legend? The first hints of this lost city came from the many travelers and explorers who passed through the region over the centuries. Marco Polo, for instance, mentioned the area in his chronicles, though he did not describe a sunken city specifically. Instead, he spoke of a kingdom known as Altan, the Golden Kingdom, which lay near a great lake in the heart of Central Asia. Some have suggested that this might be a reference to the city now believed to be beneath Issyk-Kul, though Polo's accounts remain vague. But it wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries that the idea of a submerged city began to take hold. Local folklore spoke of the city's sudden and mysterious disappearance, with some legends suggesting that it was swallowed by the waters of Issyk-Kul as punishment for the sins of its people. Others claimed the city was lost in a natural disaster, perhaps an earthquake or a flood, which caused it to sink into the lake, leaving no trace behind. What makes this story so compelling is not just the absence of the city, but the possibility of its existence. The lake itself is known to have been home to various civilizations throughout history. The surrounding region was once part of the ancient Silk Road, a trade route that connected the East and the West. Various nomadic cultures, as well as settled peoples, passed through this area, and it's likely that the region saw the rise of multiple cities and settlements over the centuries. Could one of these cities have risen to prominence and then vanished, leaving only vague remnants and stories behind? Archaeological evidence from the shores of Issyk-Kul and the surrounding area suggests that settlements once thrived here. Excavations in the region have uncovered ancient structures, pottery, and artifacts that point to a flourishing culture. Yet, no definitive evidence of the sunken city has ever been found. Surveys of the lake's bottom, using modern sonar equipment, have turned up traces of ancient settlements, but these could be anything from underwater villages to burial sites. The images are unclear, and none have yet been linked to the legendary city. So, is the city really out there, hidden beneath the waters, or are these just relics of the past? ordinary settlements that have been exaggerated in legend. For years, scientists have speculated about the existence of the city beneath Issyk-Kul. Some argue that the city could have been an important center of the ancient Sogdian civilization, a group known for their mastery of trade and culture. The Sogdians were instrumental in facilitating commerce along the Silk Road, and their influence stretched from present-day Iran all the way to China. Could a Sogdian city, known for its wealth and prominence, have been lost in the tumult of history, its ruins eventually submerged by the changing waters of the lake? There are also theories that the city could have been a part of the larger nomadic kingdoms that ruled Central Asia. The Mongols, for example, swept through the region in the 13th century, and some believe that their conquests could have led to the destruction of cities that were later forgotten or submerged. Others propose that the city was part of a much older civilization, one that predates even the Sogdians and the Mongols, and that it was destroyed in a catastrophic event, leaving only faint echoes of its existence in local myth. One of the most intriguing aspects of the mystery is the way the city's story is told. The idea of a city of gold lost beneath the lake's depths has fueled imagination for centuries. Could there be an element of truth to the legend? Was this city truly as rich and magnificent as the stories suggest? If the city existed, it would have been an important cultural and trading hub, perhaps even a kingdom of its own, with a wealth of treasures and knowledge that would have been lost to the world forever. But even if the city is not discovered beneath Issyk-Kul, the question remains: what other secrets lie beneath the waters of the lake? The region is known for its ancient history, and other sunken settlements or forgotten civilizations could still be waiting to be found. Could there be more than one lost city in the area, each one waiting for the right combination of technology and luck to reveal itself? The vanishing of the city beneath Lake Issyk-Kul is a mystery that continues to defy explanation. While some scholars believe that it is simply a legend, others argue that there is enough evidence to suggest that a once great civilization was lost to the waters. As modern technology continues to probe the lake's depths, the mystery persists, waiting to be solved. Could the city of gold truly lie beneath the tranquil waters of Issyk-Kul? Or is it simply a story crafted by time and myth, designed to inspire wonder and awe? As we look out across the serene surface of the lake, the question lingers: what lies beneath, waiting to be uncovered? From the sunken city beneath Lake Issyk-Kul, we now travel to the ancient, sun-drenched plains of the Indus Valley, a vast, mysterious expanse that once housed one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Yet despite its monumental achievements, much of its story remains a quiet enigma, lost to the sands of time. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, flourished around 4,500 years ago, stretching across what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. But what happened to it? How did such a sophisticated society, with its advanced urban planning, writing system, and extensive trade networks, seemingly vanish without a trace? The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro are the heart of this mystery. Located along the banks of the Indus River, these ancient cities were marvels of engineering. Their grid-like streets, sophisticated drainage systems, and standardized brick construction suggest a culture that understood the principles of urban planning long before the rise of Rome or Athens. The people of the Indus Valley also created a form of writing, yet to be fully deciphered, that adorned seals and pottery, hinting at a rich cultural and administrative life. They traded with distant regions, from Mesopotamia to the Persian Gulf, and their craftsmanship in beads, pottery, and metallurgy was highly advanced. Yet, despite these remarkable achievements, the Indus Valley civilization disappeared from the historical record with no clear explanation. By around 1900 BC, the once thriving cities were abandoned, their inhabitants seemingly vanishing into the shadows of history. The reasons for their sudden decline remain a subject of intense speculation, and the mystery of the silent years, the time between the civilization's flourishing and its disappearance, continues to haunt historians and archaeologists. What happened to the people of the Indus Valley? The most commonly cited theory is that environmental changes played a significant role in their downfall. Evidence suggests that the region experienced a series of climatic shifts, including a gradual decrease in rainfall, which could have disrupted the agricultural systems upon which the civilization relied. The once reliable flow of the Indus River may have shifted, leading to flooding or, conversely, to droughts. The Indus Valley cities, built along the river's fertile floodplains, would have been especially vulnerable to such changes. Could it have been the environmental collapse that led to the end of the civilization, forcing its people to abandon their cities in search of more hospitable lands? But while environmental factors certainly seem to have played a role, the mystery of the silent years is far from resolved. The disappearance of the Indus Valley civilization is not a story of a sudden, catastrophic event, but of a gradual unraveling, an entire culture fading away, with little to no record of why or how it happened. Unlike the Egyptians, whose hieroglyphs provide a record of their rise and fall, the Harappans left behind no written chronicles. Their writing system remains undeciphered, and no detailed historical records have been found to explain their demise. Some scholars suggest that the decline of the Indus Valley civilization may have been linked to the arrival of Indo-Aryan peoples, nomadic tribes who gradually migrated into the region from the steppes north of the Caucasus. These newcomers, with their distinct languages and cultures, may have displaced or absorbed the indigenous Harappan population, leading to the collapse of the cities. But while there is evidence of such migrations, it's unclear whether they were directly responsible for the civilization's downfall or simply part of the larger, complex process of cultural change that took place over centuries. Another theory points to internal factors within the society itself. Was there political instability, social upheaval? Some researchers have suggested that the civilization's very success may have been its downfall. As the cities grew larger and more complex, could there have been a breakdown in governance or social order? The uniformity of the Harappan cities, suggesting a highly centralized system of control, might have been vulnerable to internal strife, making it susceptible to decline. However, one of the most intriguing and speculative ideas about the Indus Valley's disappearance involves the notion of an outside invasion. Unlike the Egyptians or Mesopotamians, the Harappans left behind no accounts of warfare or invasions, and their cities show little evidence of violent destruction. In fact, many of the cities were abandoned relatively peacefully, without signs of battle. Still, some theorists have proposed that a foreign invasion, perhaps from the Central Asian steppes or from regions further west, could have played a role in the collapse. Could the Harappans, so advanced in their engineering and trade, have been overwhelmed by a force they were not prepared for? Yet, what makes this mystery even more perplexing is the absence of any definitive evidence to support these theories. There are no records of invaders, no tombs filled with the bodies of fallen warriors, no trace of a final, violent confrontation. The cities of the Indus Valley simply fell silent, their streets deserted, their houses abandoned, their civilization slipping into history like a forgotten dream. The sheer lack of evidence, both for and against each theory, adds to the mystery, leaving us to wonder, could there be another explanation altogether? Some researchers, particularly those focused on the mystery of the Indus Valley script, argue that the answer may lie in the very nature of the Harappan writing system. Could it hold the key to understanding the civilization's fate? If the script could be deciphered, would it reveal a story of collapse, migration, or transformation? Or does the absence of such a script simply reflect the fact that the Harappans were a society content to live without leaving a detailed record of their past? There is also the possibility that the fate of the Indus Valley civilization was not a single, unified event, but a series of interconnected shifts. Perhaps the civilization didn't disappear so much as transform, its people migrating, merging with other cultures, and adapting to new ways of life. After all, the Indus Valley was not an isolated civilization. It was part of a larger web of ancient societies that spanned the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, and the Near East. As cultures collided and exchanged ideas, could the Harappans have simply been absorbed into a larger, more dynamic world? The silent years of the Indus Valley stand as a reminder of the fragility of civilizations. Despite their remarkable achievements, the Harappans, like so many before and after them, left behind no clear answer to their disappearance. The cities may be silent, but the questions remain loud and unresolved. What truly happened to the people of the Indus Valley? What caused their civilization to fade so quietly and without warning? And what secrets still lie buried beneath the ruins, waiting to be uncovered? As the dust settles over the ancient cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, the riddle persists, an unanswered question that continues to haunt the archaeologists and historians who seek to unlock its mystery. As we leave the silent streets of Mohenjo-Daro and the vanished kingdoms of the past, we turn our gaze to one of the most perplexing and captivating mysteries of ancient Egypt, a mystery that lies hidden between the known dynasties of one of the greatest civilizations in history. The Pharaoh, long forgotten, whose existence seems to blur the lines between the well-documented periods of Egypt's history. A gap, an absence, a missing link. In the sweeping sands of Egypt, beneath the scorching sun, the tombs of pharaohs and the monumental pyramids stand as eternal witnesses to the grandeur of an ancient civilization. Yet, as vast and well-documented as Egypt's history is, there are still gaps, unexplained periods, rulers whose names are missing from official records, and mysterious disappearances that have left historians scratching their heads. One such mystery involves the so-called missing pharaoh between dynasties. The gap in question is located between two well-documented eras of Egyptian rule, just after the reign of Pharaoh Amenemhat II of the 12th dynasty and before the rise of the 13th dynasty, a time that should be filled with records of succession, triumph, and transition. But strangely, this period appears to have been deliberately erased from history, or at the very least, the name of the pharaoh who ruled during it has vanished without a trace. In the ancient annals of Egypt, the dynasties are carefully recorded, each pharaoh taking their place in a well-ordered lineage. Yet, between the reign of Amenemhat II and the first rulers of the 13th dynasty, there is a gap. The records suggest a hiatus in the traditional succession of power, one that has led many to believe that a pharaoh once sat upon the throne, but for reasons unknown, his name and his reign were either lost or deliberately erased. But why would such a figure be removed from history? What could have caused this mysterious void? This period is particularly intriguing because the 12th dynasty under Amenemhat II was one of Egypt's most prosperous. The pharaohs of this time were known for their military successes, their impressive construction projects, and their cultural achievements. So why, after this period of strength and stability, would there be such a strange break, one that seemingly erased any record of a ruler? The absence of the missing pharaoh's name in inscriptions, monuments, or tombs suggests that someone, or something, was determined to keep this ruler's memory hidden. There are several theories about why this pharaoh's reign might have been erased. One possibility is that the ruler was unpopular, either due to poor leadership or a failed military campaign, and that subsequent rulers sought to remove his memory from the official record in order to reinforce their legitimacy. In ancient Egypt, the king's power was often justified through divine right, with pharaohs claiming to be the living gods of Egypt. A ruler who was seen as weak or unsuccessful would have been a threat to the divine order, and erasing his memory might have been a way to protect the stability of the kingdom. Another theory posits that this missing pharaoh may have been part of a short-lived dynasty or regime that was overthrown or replaced in a violent coup. In this case, the erasure could be a result of political maneuvering, with the new rulers wiping out any trace of their predecessors in order to cement their own power. The fact that this gap falls between two well-established dynasties during a period of relative peace and prosperity suggests that the events of this time may have been deeply political, a time of turmoil that we are only now beginning to understand. Yet another possibility is that this missing pharaoh was deliberately erased due to religious or ideological reasons. During the reign of the 12th dynasty, Egypt was undergoing significant religious and cultural changes. New gods were being introduced, old traditions were being questioned, and power was shifting between different factions of the priesthood. Could it be that the missing pharaoh's reign was tied to a particular religious movement that was later rejected by the ruling elite? If so, erasing the ruler's name from history would have been an effective way to eliminate the influence of a possibly heretical figure and restore the dominance of the more traditional religious orders. For decades, scholars have debated the existence of this elusive pharaoh. Some believe that the gap in the records may not be the result of deliberate erasure, but rather of incomplete or lost documentation. Egypt's climate, with its constant shifting sands and the ravages of time, has caused many ancient texts and monuments to decay or disappear. Could it simply be that the evidence of this pharaoh's reign has been lost to time, rather than intentionally destroyed? In the absence of written records, archaeologists have turned to other sources of evidence to uncover the truth. Excavations of tombs and monuments from this time have yielded fascinating but incomplete clues. Some inscriptions, which appear to date from the time in question, hint at the existence of a ruler whose name is obscured or partially damaged. Yet despite extensive research, no definitive evidence has emerged to confirm the identity of the missing pharaoh. There is also the possibility that the lost pharaoh might have left no physical trace at all. Could it be that he was a figure whose reign was largely symbolic, perhaps a ruler whose power was less focused on military conquest or monumental building projects and more on maintaining peace and diplomacy? In this case, he might have been overshadowed by the grander figures around him, and his reign would have been quietly forgotten by history. Despite the intrigue and the many theories surrounding the missing pharaoh, the mystery remains unsolved. What happened to this ruler, and why has his name been lost to the ages? Was he truly erased by his successors, or has history simply failed to record his reign accurately? The gap between the 12th and 13th dynasties continues to provoke questions that have yet to be answered, leaving us with a puzzle that may never be solved. As we examine the rich tapestry of Egyptian history, we are reminded that even the most well-documented civilizations hold secrets. The story of the missing pharaoh is a quiet reminder that there are still corners of history we have yet to illuminate, and that the past, no matter how carefully preserved, always has shadows waiting to be uncovered. What might be hidden in these gaps, waiting for the right moment to surface? Only time will tell. As we move from the shadowy corridors of Egypt's lost pharaohs, we find ourselves stepping into the heart of the Roman Empire, a civilization renowned for its military conquests, architectural marvels, and engineering feats. Yet, among the many artifacts that have survived the ravages of time, there is one that continues to puzzle archaeologists and historians alike, an object so simple in form, yet so enigmatic in purpose: the Roman Dodecahedron. This small, hollow object, made of bronze or stone, is a perfect example of the ancient world's mysteries. Shaped like a dodecahedron, a polyhedron with 12 flat pentagonal faces, it has no written records to explain its function, no inscriptions to identify its creator, and no clear context to explain its role in Roman society. Despite being found in a wide range of locations across the Roman Empire, from Britain to the borders of Palestine, these artifacts remain tantalizingly unexplained. The first Roman dodecahedron was discovered in the early 18th century in a military camp in what is now Germany. Since then, more than 50 of these objects have been unearthed, scattered across a vast expanse of the Roman world, including the Netherlands, France, Austria, and even as far as Syria. What's striking about these artifacts is not just their geometric shape, but their complete lack of definitive purpose. They seem to have no direct parallel in Roman art, religion, or daily life, and yet their distribution across the empire suggests that they held some significance. The dodecahedrons vary in size, with most measuring between 4 and 11 centimeters in diameter. Some are hollow, others solid. They often have knobs or projections at each vertex, which gives them a slightly more complex appearance. Some of the faces are decorated with intricate patterns, though these designs do not seem to be symbolic in any clear way. The material used for their construction also varies. Many are made from bronze, though stone versions have been found as well. So what were these objects? The mainstream explanation is that the dodecahedrons were likely used as measuring instruments, possibly for surveying or determining distances. Some suggest that they may have been used to gauge the optimal placement of soldiers or fortifications, or perhaps to assist in the construction of roads and other infrastructure, which were such a vital part of the Roman Empire. There are those who theorize that the dodecahedrons were used in some form of astronomy, perhaps to track the stars or calculate time. After all, the Romans were known for their interest in the heavens, and the dodecahedron's geometric precision could suggest a tool for measuring celestial events. Yet, even this practical theory raises questions. If the dodecahedron was a tool for surveying or measurement, why are they so elaborately crafted? The precision and care put into the making of these objects suggest a level of craftsmanship far beyond what would be required for a simple utilitarian instrument. If they were merely tools, why would they be found in such disparate locations, often far removed from any known sites of construction or military activity? The absence of detailed documentation of their use only deepens the mystery. Another intriguing possibility is that these objects were some form of ceremonial or religious artifact. Ancient Romans were known for their devotion to various gods and goddesses, and many of their rituals involved the use of symbolic objects. Could the dodecahedron have been part of a religious ritual, perhaps used in divination or to symbolize the cosmos itself? The geometric shape of the dodecahedron, with its 12 faces, could have held symbolic meaning, representing the 12 months of the year or the 12 signs of the zodiac, both of which were important elements of Roman culture. Yet, despite this, no direct evidence links the dodecahedron to any known religious practice or belief. Some even speculate that the Roman dodecahedron was used as a game or toy. Its form and the presence of small knobs on its vertices could suggest it was a puzzle or a form of entertainment. In fact, there are some similarities between the Roman dodecahedron and later medieval dice, which were used in various games. If this theory were true, however, it would raise another question. Why would such a seemingly simple object be crafted with such precision and care if it was merely intended for recreation? As the theories accumulate, the question remains: why, given the wide range of potential explanations, do we still know so little about the true purpose of the Roman dodecahedron? Its widespread distribution across the empire would suggest it was not just a curiosity, but rather something with a practical application, a tool or object with a role to play in daily Roman life. But what that role was remains elusive. A more speculative theory posits that the Roman dodecahedron was something far stranger, an object of alien origin. The idea that the Romans possessed knowledge of advanced geometry or technology beyond what we would expect for the time has sparked the imaginations of those who believe in extraterrestrial involvement in ancient history. While this theory is highly controversial and lacks any concrete evidence, it is an example of how the dodecahedron continues to inspire creative thinking about the past. Could these objects, with their precision and mystery, be remnants of knowledge lost to time? Or perhaps something more enigmatic than we can comprehend? As with many artifacts from the ancient world, the Roman dodecahedron challenges our understanding of the past. Its mystery deepens as more are discovered, with no clear answers emerging. Was it a tool of science or surveying? A religious symbol? A toy or game? Or something else entirely? The absence of definitive answers means that, much like the missing Pharaoh between Dynasties or the lost city beneath Issyk-Kul, the Roman dodecahedron remains an object that sparks wonder and curiosity, leaving us with more questions than answers. Could it be that the Romans, with their vast empire, left behind clues that are still waiting to be decoded? The dodecahedron is a silent witness to that history, its purpose as elusive as the empire that crafted it. As we delve deeper into these ancient mysteries, we are reminded that history is often more complex and enigmatic than we might wish it to be. What if the answers to these questions are hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to finally understand? The Roman dodecahedron, like so many other ancient artifacts, remains a testament to the fact that there is still much to learn from the past. As we leave the shores of the Roman Empire and the hidden mysteries of the ancient world, we turn our attention to the vast Pacific Ocean, a vast expanse of water so enormous it has long been considered the final frontier for many of the world's ancient civilizations. The islands that dot this ocean, often isolated and remote, seem to hold secrets that challenge our understanding of ancient navigation and the human spirit of exploration. Among the greatest of these mysteries are the Polynesian return voyages, a story that has been lost to time, yet whose echoes can still be heard today. The Polynesian islands are scattered across a vast region of the Pacific Ocean, stretching from the Marquesas to Easter Island, from Hawaii to New Zealand. The sheer size of this area, over 10 million square miles of ocean, makes it seem like a place that could never have been fully explored or navigated by ancient peoples. And yet, over 1,000 years ago, the Polynesians did exactly that. They traversed this immense ocean, discovering and settling on islands far from their original homeland. But even more remarkably, they accomplished this feat without the aid of compasses, maps, or modern navigational tools, using only the stars, ocean currents, and the wind as their guides. What is perhaps even more intriguing is the story of the Polynesian return voyages, a tale that speaks to the mystery of lost navigation routes and the forgotten paths between islands that were once well known but are now obscured by the passage of time. These return voyages, which brought Polynesians back to their islands of origin, have remained a subject of fascination and debate among historians and anthropologists. Were these journeys intentional, or were they the result of a series of chance events? Did they involve a form of navigation that has been lost to history, or were they simply part of a larger, more complex system of exploration that the Polynesians once mastered? The Polynesians were, without question, some of the greatest navigators the world has ever known. They built double-hulled canoes, which were capable of long oceanic voyages, and developed sophisticated systems of navigation based on the stars, wind patterns, and the movements of ocean currents. By studying the night sky, they were able to plot their course across thousands of miles of open ocean, finding their way to distant islands with remarkable accuracy. This navigation was not simply a matter of sailing from one point to another. It was a deep, intuitive understanding of the natural world that allowed them to read the ocean like a map, understanding the subtle signs that would guide them home. But it is the story of the return voyages that adds an additional layer of mystery to their accomplishments. The Polynesians settled many islands across the Pacific, and in the process, they created distinct cultures and societies on each of these islands. However, the idea that they then returned to their original homeland, or to their ancestral islands, raises questions. How did they know where to go? What happened to the knowledge of these roots? And why did some Polynesians appear to lose touch with their ancestral roots, only to rediscover them centuries later? In many ways, the story of the Polynesian return voyages is a story of lost knowledge and rediscovery. The first Polynesian explorers set out from the Marquesas Islands, making their way to the Hawaiian Islands, Easter Island, and New Zealand. They did so with remarkable precision, using nothing but their understanding of the stars and the sea. Yet for reasons that remain unclear, many of these routes were eventually lost. Some believe that after the initial waves of exploration, the Polynesians began to lose touch with their ancestral knowledge, perhaps due to isolation, internal strife, or changing environmental conditions. The Polynesian return voyages, however, suggest that these routes were not forgotten forever. In the centuries that followed the first explorations, some Polynesians appear to have made deliberate efforts to retrace the steps of their ancestors, seeking out the islands from which they had come. These return voyages, often undertaken with only rudimentary maps or oral histories to guide them, are thought to have been part of a larger effort to reconnect with lost traditions and knowledge. Yet, despite the fact that these voyages were undertaken, there is still much we do not know about them. Some of the evidence for the Polynesian return voyages comes from oral traditions. Many of the island cultures across the Pacific have stories of explorers who sailed to distant lands and then returned to their homeland. These stories are often told with reverence, hinting at a deep cultural understanding of the importance of these voyages. But the exact nature of these return journeys remains unclear. Were they voyages of discovery, or were they part of a much larger tradition of exploration and reconnection that was once common throughout the Pacific? One of the more mysterious aspects of the Polynesian return voyages is the fact that they seem to have been deliberately erased from the historical record. While many Polynesian cultures maintained oral histories, they were often reluctant to share their knowledge of navigation with outsiders. This secrecy may have been a way of protecting their ancient roots, preserving the sacred knowledge of their ancestors. Over time, much of this knowledge seems to have been lost, and the stories of the return voyages faded into obscurity. Another factor that complicates the story of the return voyages is the issue of timing. The Polynesians are believed to have arrived in Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand sometime between 1000 BC and 1300 AD, yet the exact dates of these voyages are difficult to pinpoint. How much time passed between the initial settlement of these islands and the later return voyages? Did the Polynesians know they were retracing their ancestors' steps, or did they simply stumble upon the forgotten paths by chance? Perhaps one of the most intriguing theories surrounding the return voyages is that they may have been prompted by the environmental changes taking place in the Pacific during the medieval period. Some scholars suggest that the Polynesians, faced with changing weather patterns, crop failures, or rising sea levels, may have set out on return voyages in search of new lands or more fertile areas. Others propose that the return voyages were an effort to reconnect with ancestral lands, either for religious reasons or in search of a sense of cultural continuity. Despite all these theories, the mystery of the Polynesian return voyages remains unsolved. The routes of the early Polynesian explorers, the reasons behind their return journeys, and the loss and rediscovery of these ancient pathways are questions that continue to elude historians and archaeologists. While much of Polynesian navigation has been rediscovered in recent decades, and modern scientists are beginning to piece together the fragments of knowledge that once guided these remarkable sailors, there is still much we do not understand about their voyages. In the end, the Polynesian return voyages are a testament to the enduring mystery of human exploration, the unquenchable desire to understand the world, to travel beyond the known, and to reconnect with lost knowledge. As we search for answers to these ancient questions, we are reminded that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a living, breathing story of human curiosity, resilience, and the endless quest for discovery. What other mysteries might lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered in the vast, endless ocean? Only time will tell. As we leave behind the deep mysteries of the Pacific, we turn our gaze back to the heart of Europe, where an ancient civilization, cloaked in myth and enigma, once thrived. Nestled in the hills of central Italy, there lies a remarkable monument, one that has puzzled historians and archaeologists for centuries: the Cyclopean walls of Alatri. These imposing walls, towering and ancient, are a striking feature of the Italian town of Alatri. As you approach the site, you can't help but be awed by their sheer scale and mystery. The massive stones, some weighing as much as 10 tons, are meticulously stacked in tight, precise formations, creating a formidable barrier that surrounds the ancient town. The walls themselves stretch around the Acropolis, a raised area that once served as the political and religious center of the city. The town of Alatri, in its prime, was a thriving urban hub of the ancient Hernican people, a civilization that has since faded from the historical record. At first glance, the sheer size and precision of the stonework suggest a level of engineering skill far beyond what one might expect from the Hernicans, who, though advanced, were far from the grand builders of ancient Rome or Egypt. The stones of the walls are not carved or dressed, yet they fit together so perfectly that not even a knife could slip between them. The exact technique used to construct these walls remains one of the greatest mysteries of the site. Some stones appear to have been moved from great distances, and the arrangement of the stones suggests a deliberate effort to create a structure that could withstand both time and enemy assault. The walls of Alatri are not the only feature that captivates visitors, however. A mysterious inscription can be found in one of the stones, etched into the surface of the ancient masonry. The meaning of the inscription remains unknown, as no one has yet been able to decipher it. The presence of this strange symbol raises a host of questions. Is it a mark of the builders themselves? Is it a religious symbol, or perhaps a code that could unlock more about the wall's purpose? Like much of Alatri's history, this inscription remains an enigma, one of many unanswered questions about the purpose and origin of the site. The prevailing explanation for the Cyclopean walls of Alatri is that they were built by the Hernicans, a people who lived in the region long before the rise of Rome. These walls are thought to date back to the 6th century BC, though some suggest they may be even older. The Hernicans were known to have constructed other fortifications in the region, and the walls of Alatri are often seen as the crowning achievement of their architectural and defensive skills. Yet, there are those who believe the walls are older than the Hernicans, perhaps far older, even predating known civilizations. Some have speculated that these walls were built by an unknown ancient civilization, one that predated the Etruscans, Romans, or even the Greeks. Could the technology required to create such walls have been lost to history? What happened to the civilization that built them? One theory suggests that the walls were constructed by the Etruscans, a powerful people who flourished in central Italy before the rise of Rome. The Etruscans were known for their advanced engineering skills and their ability to create large, imposing structures. However, the fact that the walls of Alatri are unlike any known Etruscan construction makes this theory less convincing to many historians. The Etruscans were certainly skilled builders, but the techniques used in Alatri seem to be of a different, more mysterious origin. Could the walls of Alatri be the work of a lost civilization, one that vanished long before the rise of Rome? The idea that the site was constructed by a civilization older than the Etruscans, one whose knowledge of stonework and engineering was far more advanced than we have been led to believe, has captivated the imaginations of many. Some have even proposed that the construction of such monumental walls could have been the work of giants, figures from legend who, according to ancient stories, possessed superhuman strength and knowledge. These so-called Cyclopean walls, with their massive stones and precise construction, seem to lend credence to this theory, though there is no historical evidence to support it. Another intriguing aspect of the Cyclopean walls is their precise alignment with the sun and the stars. Some researchers believe that the walls were not simply built for defensive purposes, but may have also served as a sort of astronomical observatory or a sacred site tied to celestial events. The Hernicans, like many ancient civilizations, had a deep connection to the heavens, and it is possible that the walls of Alatri were designed with some kind of astronomical significance in mind. Perhaps the stones were carefully placed to mark the solstices, equinoxes, or other important celestial events, a feature common in many ancient cultures. Yet, despite all the theories, there is still no definitive explanation for the purpose or origins of the walls. The fact that no written records have been found to shed light on the construction of Alatri leaves us with only the stonework itself, which, though impressive, offers little in terms of understanding the culture that built it. What do these walls truly represent? Were they a symbol of power and prestige, a means of defense against enemies, or something else entirely? As with many ancient mysteries, the truth may be hidden in the layers of time, buried beneath centuries of erosion, political upheaval, and the ravages of history. The walls of Alatri remain a testament to the ingenuity of their builders and a reminder of how much we still have to learn about the civilizations that once thrived in the shadows of what we now call history. Perhaps the most compelling question of all is not whether we can solve the riddle of the Cyclopean walls, but whether we should. What if the answers are meant to remain hidden, a piece of history that serves as a reminder of the mysteries that have shaped our world? And what if, buried beneath the stones of Alatri, there are still secrets, knowledge, and stories that we have yet to uncover? The walls stand as silent guardians, their secrets waiting for those with the patience and curiosity to look beyond the surface and discover the mysteries still hidden within the stones. As we leave behind the ancient walls of Alatri, we turn our attention to the misty, windswept landscapes of Britain, once a far-flung province of the Roman Empire. There, in the distant past, amidst the rolling hills and fog-covered valleys, a mystery waits to be uncovered. It is a mystery that lies hidden in the annals of Roman bureaucracy, one that challenges our understanding of Roman governance and its reach into the furthest corners of its empire, the lost Roman census of Britannia. Imagine standing on the banks of the River Thames, looking out over the ancient land of Britannia, where Roman legions once marched and grand villas stood in contrast to the untamed wilderness. The Romans, ever methodical in their rule, conducted censuses across their empire, gathering crucial data on population, wealth, land, and resources. These records, intended to manage taxes, military service, and local administration, were a key part of Roman governance. Yet somewhere in the mists of time, the Roman census of Britannia, specifically the early census taken shortly after the Roman conquest of Britain, has disappeared, leaving behind only fragments of evidence and tantalizing gaps in our understanding of Roman Britain. In the Roman world, censuses were vital for keeping the empire organized. They determined everything from how many soldiers were available for military service to how much tax each province owed to Rome. The Roman Empire, with its vast territories stretching from Palestine in the east to Hispania in the west, was a sprawling and complex system that relied on accurate and up-to-date records to maintain control. The most famous of these records, the census of Rome itself, was conducted every 5 years. In other provinces, such as Gaul, Egypt, and the eastern provinces, censuses were routinely taken to manage the empire's vast resources. But what about Britain? The Roman conquest of Britain began in 43 AD under Emperor Claudius. By 47 AD, the Romans had established a strong foothold, and their administrative systems, including the census, were no doubt set in motion. We know that some form of census or population record was conducted in Britain shortly after the Roman occupation. Roman historians such as Tacitus make reference to census taking in Britain, noting that the Britons were subject to Roman taxation and military service. But after the initial waves of conquest and early administration, the full details of Britain's Roman census are lost to history. The records themselves have never been found. Ancient scholars and archaeologists have scoured the archives, but not a single full record of the Roman census in Britain survives, at least none that we know of. What remains, however, are brief references in Roman texts, occasional mentions in inscriptions, and some scattered fragments of census documents, mostly from other parts of the empire. These fragments suggest that a system of population tracking was established, but whether it was fully implemented or whether the records were destroyed remains a point of contention. One of the most puzzling aspects of the missing census is the lack of archaeological evidence. In other provinces of the Roman Empire, census records and population data were often etched into stone tablets or written on papyrus, materials that have survived the ravages of time. Yet in Britain, no such records have been discovered. Was it simply the fragility of materials used in early Roman Britain that led to their disappearance? Or is there something more to the story, a deliberate effort to erase or obscure these records? One possibility is that the Romans, in their conquest of Britain, may have been forced to abandon their early attempts at a census due to instability or resistance from local tribes. The British Isles were far from the heart of the Roman Empire, and as the Romans expanded their control, they encountered fierce opposition from indigenous tribes. The early years of Roman occupation were marked by uprisings and tensions with local groups, making it difficult to implement such a systematic approach to governance. If the census was viewed as a tool of Roman control, it might have been a target for sabotage or destruction. Another theory points to the possibility that the Romans never fully completed their census in Britain. In the early years of occupation, the Romans were more concerned with military conquest and securing their hold over the region than with meticulous record-keeping. As the empire became more stable, administrative systems were likely put into place. But by that time, much of the early work on the census may have been lost, either through neglect or destruction during periods of upheaval. There are also those who speculate that the loss of the census records may be connected to the eventual decline of Roman control over Britain. By the early 5th century AD, the Roman Empire was in decline, and Britain was increasingly left to fend for itself. As Roman power in the region weakened, so too did the administrative systems that had been put in place. It is possible that the census records, along with many other documents of Roman Britain, were abandoned or destroyed as the empire pulled back from the province. This would account for the lack of surviving documents, leaving only the vague references in the historical texts. Perhaps one of the most intriguing ideas is the suggestion that the lost census is not a result of neglect or destruction, but of something far more deliberate, a cover-up. Could it be that the Romans intentionally erased their early census records in Britain, hiding the true nature of their conquest or the scale of their early settlement? Some fringe theories propose that the early Romans in Britain were much more brutal than traditional histories suggest, and that the census was hidden to obscure the extent of their violent occupation. While there is no concrete evidence to support such claims, the idea of deliberate historical erasure adds another layer of intrigue to this mystery. And then there is the possibility that the Roman census records never existed in the first place, or that they were never intended to be comprehensive. Perhaps, in the chaotic early years of conquest, the Romans did not attempt to take a full census at all. They may have relied more on local leaders or tribal systems to administer taxes and conscript soldiers, leaving the more formal census process to be implemented at a later date. The lack of a single unified record for Roman Britain might then be explained by a system that was more decentralized, focused on individual settlements and regions rather than a unified census. So, what happened to the lost Roman census of Britannia? Why, after centuries of Roman rule, do we find ourselves with only hints and echoes of what might have once been one of the most important administrative documents in the Roman Empire? The mystery of the lost census is one that remains unsolved, leaving us with far more questions than answers. Was it destroyed in the turmoil of early Roman occupation? Was it abandoned as the Roman Empire's hold over Britain slipped away? Or was it concealed for reasons that history has yet to reveal? Like so many other mysteries of the ancient world, the answer may never come. Yet the absence of these records speaks volumes in itself. What else may lie hidden in the mists of time, waiting to be uncovered? What else might be lost or intentionally erased from history's official narrative? Only time, and perhaps a stroke of archaeological luck, will tell. As we transition from the fog-covered hills of Roman Britain to the arid, windswept plains of southern Peru, a different kind of mystery awaits. Here, amidst the barren landscape, lies one of the most perplexing and enduring enigmas of the ancient world, the Nazca lines. These vast and intricate geoglyphs, etched into the earth by the Nazca civilization over 2,000 years ago, continue to captivate and mystify those who study them. What could have possessed these ancient people to create such a precise and intricate work, and how was it done with such astounding accuracy? The Nazca lines are a series of giant, geometric patterns and animal figures carved into the desert floor, stretching over an area of approximately 450 square kilometers. The lines, which are most visible from the air, depict a wide range of shapes, from simple straight lines and triangles to complex representations of animals like monkeys, spiders, and hummingbirds. The scale of these designs is simply staggering. Some of the lines stretch for over 1,200 feet, while the largest figures can be as long as 1,000 feet. But what makes these geoglyphs even more remarkable is the precision with which they were created, despite the fact that the Nazca people did not have the technology to view the designs from above. Standing in the heart of the Nazca Desert, surrounded by these vast, intricate lines, it's easy to feel a sense of awe at the magnitude of the task the Nazca civilization undertook. How could a people, without aerial views or sophisticated surveying equipment, create such large-scale artwork with such precision? And why? The answers are as elusive as the geoglyphs themselves, which remain etched into the earth like a cryptic message left behind by a long-gone civilization. The mainstream explanation for the Nazca lines suggests that they were created for ritual or religious purposes. Some scholars believe that the lines were part of a sacred landscape meant to be walked by the Nazca people as they performed religious ceremonies. The figures, it is hypothesized, may have represented gods or supernatural beings, and the lines themselves may have been pathways or symbols meant to connect the earthly realm with the divine. This idea is supported by the fact that many of the lines align with astronomical phenomena, such as the solstices, suggesting that the Nazca people may have used the geoglyphs as a form of astronomical calendar or as markers for ceremonial events tied to the cycles of the sun and stars. However, the religious explanation does not fully account for the vast complexity and the sheer scale of the lines. Some researchers have proposed that the Nazca lines were created as a form of large-scale visual art, meant to be seen only by the gods or by spiritual beings from the heavens. If this was the case, it raises further questions. How did the Nazca people, with no known ability to fly or even elevate themselves above the desert floor, conceive of designs that would be visible only from great heights? And how did they execute the lines with such precision, especially considering that the desert environment, with its extreme heat and shifting winds, would have made such large-scale projects difficult to carry out? One of the most compelling theories is that the lines were created using an ancient form of geometry or surveying techniques that have since been lost to history. It is conceivable that the Nazca people, through careful observation of the stars, the earth, and the sky, developed a system of measurement that allowed them to create these designs with extraordinary accuracy. The ability to align the lines so precisely with celestial events, like the rising and setting of the sun and stars, suggests that the Nazca had an advanced understanding of astronomy and geometry. Yet, there is no definitive evidence of how they might have achieved this. Some fringe theories propose more unconventional explanations, such as the idea that the Nazca lines were created by extraterrestrial beings. According to this hypothesis, the precision of the lines and their alignment with the stars are too perfect to have been created by human hands alone. The theory suggests that the Nazca civilization was either directly influenced by or in contact with beings from another world who provided them with the knowledge and technology necessary to construct these incredible geoglyphs. While this idea is highly speculative and lacks concrete evidence, it continues to capture the imagination of those who seek to explain the lines in a way that transcends human capabilities. Others have suggested that the Nazca lines were a form of ancient communication, meant to be seen from the sky by passing travelers or visitors. In this view, the lines might have functioned as a type of message or signal intended to convey important information, such as directions, tribal boundaries, or even warnings. The desert landscape, with its vast emptiness and lack of other landmarks, would have made such visual markers incredibly important for navigation. Could the Nazca lines have been part of a much larger network of geoglyphs, connecting different tribes or civilizations across the region? Or were they simply isolated works of art, meant for the gods alone? Yet, even with all these theories, the true purpose of the Nazca lines remains elusive. The fact that they are still visible after thousands of years, preserved in the dry desert climate, only adds to their mystique. How did the Nazca people maintain such precision over such vast distances? Did they use simple tools, or was there a more advanced method at work? And why have these lines, so expertly crafted and so clearly intended for something beyond mere decoration, remained largely unexplained for so long? The mystery of the Nazca lines speaks to something deeper, something more fundamental about human curiosity and the desire to leave a mark on the world. The Nazca people may have created these geoglyphs not simply to serve a practical purpose, but to connect with something greater, whether it was the heavens, the gods, or the very earth beneath their feet. As we look at these ancient lines, stretching out across the desert like the traces of a forgotten dream, we are reminded of how little we truly know about the cultures that came before us. Perhaps the most haunting question of all is not what the Nazca lines were meant to represent, but who the Nazca people were, and why their creations still resonate with us today. Could it be that these lines were more than just geographical markers or religious symbols? Could they be an invitation to remember a civilization whose knowledge and achievements have been largely forgotten? What hidden truths might still lie buried beneath the shifting sands of time, waiting for us to uncover? And what other mysteries remain just beyond the horizon, waiting for those brave enough to seek them out? The Nazca lines, like so many ancient wonders, are not merely a relic of the past. They are a riddle, a puzzle that continues to captivate and intrigue. And as we stand at the edge of this mystery, we are reminded that in the vast tapestry of human history, there is still so much we have yet to understand. Yet, as we continue our exploration through history's deepest mysteries, we arrive at a place that seems almost too surreal to believe. A town swallowed by the sea. A place where, in the blink of an eye, an entire community vanished, leaving behind nothing but whispers of its existence and a haunting question that has echoed through the centuries. What happened to Rungholt? Nestled on the marshy shores of the North Sea, Rungholt was once a prosperous town, thriving as a center of trade in the 13th century. Located in what is now the North Frisia region of Germany, Rungholt's wealth came from its bustling port, its fertile lands, and its strategic position on the edge of the marshes that stretch across the coastline. The town was known for its impressive buildings, rich culture, and a strong sense of independence. Its success, however, would be its undoing. The exact location of Rungholt is now lost to history, but we know from historical accounts that it was once a thriving center of commerce. Merchants and traders from all over Europe would come to the town to exchange goods, and the inhabitants of Rungholt, with their fertile land, were well known for their agricultural expertise. The town had its own church, a bustling marketplace, and was surrounded by dikes and seawalls designed to protect it from the encroaching waters of the North Sea. But in the year 1362, everything changed. On a single fateful night, a catastrophic storm hit the North Sea, one of the most violent and destructive the region had ever known. The storm, now known as the Grota Mandrenki, or Great Drowning of Men, unleashed a series of massive tidal surges that overwhelmed the town's defenses. The sea walls, which had stood for centuries, were no match for the fury of the storm. And just like that, Rungholt was gone. The town, along with its buildings and its people, was swept away by the surging waters. It vanished beneath the waves in a matter of hours. Or did it? Despite accounts of the destruction, the exact fate of Rungholt remains unclear. While the storm undoubtedly caused massive damage, there are no definitive records that describe the final moments of the town. No survivors' accounts, no last-minute warnings. The town simply disappears from the historical record after the storm, leaving only vague references in medieval texts and a mystery that endures to this day. The official explanation, which has been widely accepted, is that the storm led to the destruction of Rungholt, with the town being entirely submerged by the rising tides. The storm is said to have breached the dikes and flooded the area, leading to the swift demise of a community that had been thriving only days before. The sea, relentless and unforgiving, took everything in its path, and Rungholt was lost to history. However, as with many mysteries from the past, this explanation doesn't seem to satisfy all the questions. For one, the storm itself was not unprecedented. While it was certainly severe, the North Sea had experienced similar storms in the past. The dikes and sea walls around Rungholt, though not perfect, had withstood previous surges. Why, then, did they fail so catastrophically on that particular night? Were the dikes truly the cause of the town's destruction, or was something else at play? There are other, more speculative theories that suggest Rungholt may not have been entirely destroyed by natural forces alone. One such theory posits that the town was lost due to human intervention, specifically the destruction of the dikes by malicious actors. Some have suggested that political or economic rivalries between neighboring towns might have led to sabotage, with the dikes deliberately breached to drown Rungholt's wealth and prosperity. If this was the case, then the disappearance of the town was not simply a tragic act of nature, but a deliberate attack. But is there any truth to this theory? Or is it a convenient explanation for a mystery that simply refuses to be solved? Another theory revolves around the idea that the town was not entirely destroyed at all. Some believe that the town was abandoned before the storm hit, and that the destruction of Rungholt may have been exaggerated over time. Could it be that the town's residents, perhaps foreseeing the coming disaster, chose to flee in the face of the storm's ominous approach? If they did escape, where did they go? Could some of them have sought refuge in nearby villages, eventually assimilating into new communities and erasing all traces of their former home? Perhaps the most intriguing theory suggests that Rungholt didn't simply vanish into the sea, but rather it was buried by the shifting sands of time. Could the storm have simply covered the town with layers of silt and debris, making it difficult to locate. In recent decades, archaeological investigations have uncovered remnants of what could be the lost town. Fragments of pottery, tools, and the occasional piece of timber have been found beneath the shifting marshland. Could Rungholt, or at least part of it, still be buried somewhere beneath the earth, waiting to be rediscovered? These theories, while speculative, reveal a deeper question. Why does Rungholt's disappearance still haunt us? Perhaps it is the sheer scale of the loss that gives rise to these many interpretations. An entire town, with its people, its culture, and its history, lost without a trace. The mystery of Rungholt is not just a question of what happened to a town, but what we might be missing from history. The events of the past are often filled with gaps and inconsistencies, and Rungholt's sudden disappearance reminds us of how easily entire chapters of history can slip through the cracks. Despite the fact that centuries have passed since Rungholt's destruction, the town's legacy endures in the shadows of time. The marshlands that once bordered its shores remain a desolate, windswept place. The sea, as it always has, claims what it will. But the mystery of Rungholt persists, and its disappearance, whether through nature's hand, human intervention, or some combination of both, remains unsolved. Could the final pieces of the puzzle lie buried in the sands of the North Sea, waiting to be uncovered? Or will Rungholt's story remain lost forever, a haunting reminder of how quickly history can slip away, leaving behind only whispers of a once great civilization swallowed by the relentless tides of time? As we reflect on this mystery, we are left with more questions than answers. What really happened to Rungholt, and what remains hidden beneath the waves? Perhaps, like so many lost stories, the truth is out there, waiting for the right moment to be uncovered. Or perhaps it is lost to time forever. Only the sea knows for sure. As we leave behind the ancient ruins of lost cities and sunken towns, we now journey to a place that remains as enigmatic as it is extraordinary. Derinkuyu, the subterranean city buried deep within the soft volcanic rock of central Turkey. Located in the Cappadocia region, Derinkuyu stands as one of the most mind-boggling archaeological discoveries of the ancient world. It is a vast underground labyrinth that stretches for miles, descending as deep as 60 meters beneath the surface. But what was its purpose? Why did an ancient civilization carve such an intricate network of tunnels and chambers beneath the earth? And how did they manage to create something so complex and resilient? The first glimpse of Derinkuyu is deceptively simple. On the surface, it appears to be an ordinary part of the Cappadocian landscape, dotted with the region's iconic fairy chimneys and soft, rounded hills. But beneath the surface, a hidden world awaits, one that would surprise even the most seasoned archaeologists. In total, Derinkuyu spans over 18 levels, with rooms and passages designed to house thousands of people. Some sections of the city contain elaborate ventilation shafts, wells, and places of worship, while others are filled with living spaces, communal kitchens, and storerooms. The most extraordinary feature, perhaps, is the massive stone doors, some weighing several tons, used to seal off the different sections of the city. These doors were designed to be rolled into place to block the tunnels, offering protection to the inhabitants in times of danger. The sheer scale and sophistication of Derinkuyu suggest that it was not merely a place of refuge or temporary shelter. The city appears to have been built with a sense of permanence, as if it were designed to support an entire society for an extended period. The ventilation system, which allowed fresh air to circulate through the tunnels, the wells that provided water, and the intricate system of stairs and passageways, indicate that this was not just an emergency hideout. It was, in many ways, a fully functional underground city, capable of sustaining its inhabitants for long periods of time. The question that immediately comes to mind, of course, is why? What led the ancient people of this region, believed to be the Phrygians, later occupied by other groups such as the Byzantines and early Christians, to create such an extraordinary underground complex? The most commonly accepted explanation is that Derinkuyu was built as a refuge, a place where people could seek shelter from invading forces or natural disasters. This theory is supported by the fact that the region, throughout its history, was frequently invaded and besieged by various empires, from the Romans to the Arabs and the Seljuk Turks. In times of war, it would have made sense for the local population to retreat underground, where they would be safe from the dangers above ground. But the idea that Derinkuyu was simply a place of refuge doesn't fully account for its incredible size and complexity. If it were just a temporary shelter, would the builders have gone to such lengths to create such a vast and intricate system of tunnels? And why would they have built multiple levels, complete with living spaces and storage rooms? This raises the possibility that Derinkuyu may have served a more profound purpose, one that we have yet to fully understand. Some researchers suggest that the city may have been designed not just for defense, but also for spiritual or ritual purposes. In the heart of Derinkuyu, there are chambers that appear to have been used for worship, including a small chapel with a circular stone altar. The underground nature of the city, with its many levels and hidden rooms, could have provided a sense of sanctuary or seclusion for religious rituals. Perhaps the inhabitants believed that by retreating into the earth, they could commune with the gods or find solace away from the chaos of the world above. This idea aligns with other ancient civilizations that used underground spaces for spiritual or ceremonial purposes, such as the ancient Egyptians, who built underground tombs and burial chambers for their pharaohs. Yet another theory suggests that Derinkuyu may have been more than just a refuge. It may have been a city that existed in parallel with a thriving civilization on the surface. Some have proposed that the underground complex could have been used for trade, or as a way to protect valuable resources, such as precious metals or goods, from marauding invaders. If Derinkuyu was indeed a permanent settlement, it could have functioned as a secret city, hidden away from the prying eyes of outsiders, allowing its inhabitants to maintain their independence and control over the surrounding region. But there are darker theories as well. Could Derinkuyu have been built for an entirely different purpose, one that we can only speculate about? Some have suggested that the underground city was a place where people went to escape not just from invaders, but from their own government or rulers. Was Derinkuyu a refuge from tyrannical rule, a place where people could hide from political oppression or religious persecution? If so, could this mean that the builders of Derinkuyu were trying to escape from something more sinister than just a foreign army? There are also theories that suggest that Derinkuyu may have been connected to other underground complexes in the region. The Cappadocia area is known for its extensive network of cave dwellings and subterranean cities, and it's possible that Derinkuyu was just one part of a larger interconnected system. Could these underground cities have been part of a much broader network of hidden settlements, all designed to evade detection and protect their inhabitants? And if so, what might have caused such a widespread desire for secrecy? Was there a specific threat or danger that the ancient inhabitants of this region were trying to protect themselves from? Something so catastrophic that it drove them to build these vast underground fortresses? The mysteries of Derinkuyu are compounded by the fact that, even today, we have little understanding of who exactly built the city or when it was constructed. While it is widely believed that the city dates back to the Phrygians, some experts argue that it may have been built much earlier, perhaps by the Hittites or other ancient cultures that occupied the region. Could the design of Derinkuyu have been inspired by earlier civilizations, or was it a unique creation that emerged out of necessity? Ultimately, the purpose of Derinkuyu remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. Was it merely a refuge from the storms of war, a spiritual retreat, or something far more complex? What role did it play in the lives of those who lived there? And why did this incredible underground city, capable of housing thousands of people, remain hidden for so long, waiting to be rediscovered? As we consider these questions, we are reminded that the world is full of forgotten places, where the echoes of ancient civilizations still resonate, waiting for us to uncover their secrets. Perhaps, like Derinkuyu, some mysteries will remain buried beneath the surface, tantalizing us with the possibility of understanding, if only we are willing to dig deep enough. As we move through the annals of ancient history, we often encounter moments of such peculiar mystery that they seem more like the stuff of legends than actual events. One such story is that of Cambyses II's Surveyors, a tale woven from both recorded history and the threads of speculation, lost somewhere between myth and reality. This is a story not just of men and their fates, but of ambition, power, and the uncharted realms of ancient Persia. Cambyses II, the king of Persia in the 6th century BC, was a ruler whose ambitions stretched across the known world. He had already conquered Egypt and was looking toward the great expanse of Africa, determined to push the boundaries of his empire further than anyone before him. To facilitate his conquest and to further solidify his dominion, Cambyses ordered a daring mission, a survey of Egypt's borders and the lands beyond, a task he entrusted to a group of Persian surveyors. The mission seemed simple enough: set out, survey the land, and return with vital geographical and logistical information. However, this survey would take these men to one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, the Sahara Desert. As the group ventured into the heart of the desert, no one could have predicted that this seemingly mundane task would end in one of the most bizarre disappearances in recorded history. The fate of Cambyses' surveyors has haunted historians and archaeologists for centuries, and their story remains an enigma. The journey was said to have started in 524 BC, when Cambyses, eager to expand his empire into the western deserts of Africa, sent a group of his most trusted surveyors to determine the exact geography of the Libyan desert. The mission was to explore what lay beyond the known limits of Egyptian territory and map the lands that stretched to the farthest reaches of the empire's westward expansion. The surveyor's task was to chart the area, measure the distances, and return with detailed reports, an essential move for any great empire to expand its borders efficiently. Yet, as these surveyors set off toward the unknown, what awaited them was anything but predictable. According to the ancient historian Herodotus, the surveyor's mission would end in an eerie and unexplained fate. He describes how the Persian men entered the desert, but as they pushed deeper into the vast, unforgiving sands, they encountered what can only be described as a supernatural event, a massive, sandstorm-like force that overwhelmed them. The desert, an inhospitable and almost magical place in ancient times, appeared to consume the men whole. The men, so skilled in their craft, so trusted by Cambyses, never returned. The surveying team was lost, never to be seen or heard from again. While Herodotus presents a rather dramatic account of the surveyors' disappearance, the mystery of their fate goes far beyond simple historical storytelling. The absence of these men has puzzled scholars for centuries. How could such a sophisticated and organized empire, capable of engineering grand cities and waging long wars, lose an entire team of experienced surveyors in the middle of a desert? The most widely accepted explanation for the disappearance of the surveyors is, of course, the harsh conditions of the Sahara Desert itself. The environment is unforgiving, with vast expanses of uncharted sand dunes and extreme temperatures. Without the proper resources, navigation tools, or accurate maps, it seems plausible that the surveyors simply became lost in the desert and perished from thirst, exhaustion, or dehydration. After all, Many explorers and traders throughout history have met a similar fate in these unrelenting sands. Yet, even with this explanation, there is still something unsettling about the story. For one, Cambyses was a man of great ambition and foresight. Why would he send his men on such a perilous mission without providing them with adequate support and resources? Some historians suggest that the mission was far more ambitious than we realize, pushing these men into a region of the desert where survival was impossible. Was this an error in judgment, or was there something more at play? Herodotus's account offers an intriguing twist. He suggests that the men, after being lost, may have encountered something much darker than the desert's natural forces. According to his version, the Persian surveyors were not merely victims of nature, but possibly the victims of a curse or divine punishment. This narrative gives rise to the more supernatural theories about their fate. Perhaps the gods had turned against Cambyses, or, more specifically, his surveyors, for trespassing into forbidden lands. In this view, the men didn't just die from exposure or thirst. They were claimed by something far beyond human comprehension. Another layer to the mystery emerges when we consider the possibility that the surveyors didn't just get lost, they were deliberately led astray. Was it possible that Cambyses' enemies, either from within his empire or from outside forces, played a role in their disappearance? Ancient Persia was full of intrigue, with political maneuvering and betrayal lurking at every turn. Some theories suggest that the surveyors were betrayed and left to die as part of a larger political plot. But why, if they were so far from the reach of their enemies, would such an act have been necessary? And how would those responsible have orchestrated such an event without the Persian Empire catching wind of it? Some modern scholars even suggest that the surveyors' fate could be linked to the deep historical mystery of the desert's ancient secrets. The Sahara, with its ancient ruins and forgotten tombs, has always held a certain mystique. Was it possible that the surveyors stumbled upon an ancient site or relic, something so powerful or sacred that it led to their undoing? Perhaps they uncovered something buried deep within the desert that was meant to remain hidden. Such a theory leans heavily on the idea that the desert, in its vast, untamed expanse, holds more than just natural dangers. Could it be a place where ancient knowledge and power lay dormant, waiting for the wrong people to uncover it? The mystery deepens when we consider the lack of any other historical records of this event. The disappearance of Cambyses' surveyors, though mentioned by Herodotus, is not extensively covered by other ancient historians. Could it be that this event was so strange, so inexplicable, that it was quietly erased from official records? If Cambyses' reign had suffered from this calamity, why was the story so sparsely documented? Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the fate of Cambyses' surveyors is that, despite the centuries that have passed, the true explanation remains just out of reach. Was it nature that claimed them? Was it fate? Or was there something darker, something more supernatural at play in the desert that day? As we ponder this mystery, we are reminded that not all answers can be found in the pages of history. Some questions remain hidden beneath the sands, waiting to be uncovered. Perhaps one day, new discoveries will shed light on this ancient enigma. But for now, the fate of Cambyses II's surveyors remains a question that continues to haunt the deserts of time. What happened to them, and why has the desert kept their secret for so long? As we continue our journey through the twisting corridors of history, we encounter a civilization that has long fascinated archaeologists and historians alike: the Maya. Their cities, adorned with towering pyramids and intricate stone carvings, stand as testaments to their remarkable achievements in mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. Yet, beneath the grandeur of these ancient structures lies a mystery that still eludes us to this day: the sudden and enigmatic collapse of the first Maya civilization. It's a story shrouded in ambiguity, with much of the narrative lost to time. In the dense jungles of Central America, the once thriving city-states of the Maya civilization flourished for centuries. Yet, around the 9th century AD, something happened. A slow but inexorable decline that saw many of the great Maya cities abandoned and their vibrant culture seemingly fade into the shadows. The cause of this collapse has been a subject of debate for centuries, but what is even more perplexing is the absence of a definitive account. There is a missing chronicle, a gap in the historical record that might hold the key to understanding why one of the most advanced civilizations of its time disappeared from the historical stage. At the heart of this mystery lies the city of Copan, one of the most powerful and influential Maya cities in the Classic period. Located in present-day Honduras, Copan was a bustling urban center, home to intricate stone temples, grand plazas, and an impressive array of stelae and altars that told the stories of its rulers. Yet, as with many other Maya cities, Copan met its decline. The last inscriptions found on the stelae of Copan date to around 820 AD, and after that, silence. The city fell into ruin, its once proud monuments overtaken by the relentless encroachment of the jungle. What makes this collapse particularly intriguing is the lack of any clear explanation. Unlike other ancient civilizations, the Maya left behind a wealth of written records inscribed on stone tablets and codices made of bark paper. Yet the texts that could have shed light on the events leading to the collapse are remarkably sparse, and many of the surviving inscriptions are frustratingly vague. What happened to the chronicles of the Maya? Did they intentionally erase their history, or was it lost to the ravages of time, weather, and the elements? Some scholars have suggested that the Maya were struck by a combination of natural disasters and environmental factors. The region in which the Maya thrived is known for its cyclical droughts, and some believe that a prolonged period of drought during the 9th century could have decimated the agricultural systems that sustained the cities. If the crops failed, the population would have been forced to abandon their cities, their monumental architecture standing as silent witnesses to a once great civilization, now in ruins. However, there are still other theories, more speculative in nature, that suggest the collapse of the Maya civilization may have been the result of internal strife or political turmoil. The Maya were a civilization of city-states, each ruled by its own king, and it is possible that these kingdoms, once linked by trade and mutual interests, fell into conflict with one another. Could warfare between competing city-states have played a role in the collapse? Was there a breakdown in the complex network of alliances that sustained the Maya political system? If so, could the elites of these cities have written their own versions of events, altering the narrative to suit their political needs, or perhaps to cover up the real reasons behind the fall? One of the most compelling aspects of the missing chronicle of the Maya collapse is the notion that perhaps, in some way, the Maya themselves sought to erase this period of their history. Ancient cultures have often been known to rewrite or suppress inconvenient parts of their past, especially during times of upheaval or loss of power. Could the Maya, with their deep understanding of time and cycles, have perceived the collapse as the end of an era? Did they intentionally leave behind no detailed record of their downfall, preferring instead to focus on their achievements and their gods, rather than the failure of their political systems? Alternatively, could the disappearance of the Maya records be the result of more mundane factors, simple loss or destruction over time? The codices, fragile as they were often made of perishable materials like bark paper, which could have easily disintegrated in the humid jungle environment. The stones, too, were vulnerable to the elements, with many stelae and monuments becoming weathered and eroded over centuries. If much of the written record was destroyed by natural forces, what remains is a patchwork of inscriptions that give us only the faintest glimpse into the civilization's later years. And yet, despite these various explanations, One question continues to haunt the mystery. Why were some cities abandoned so suddenly, with no apparent record of the reasons for their downfall? In some cases, it appears as though entire cities were left in a state of haste, with buildings half completed and roads that were never fully finished. There is no sign of gradual decay or decline, but rather an abrupt, almost deliberate exit. Was this the result of a singular catastrophic event? Something so sudden and all-encompassing that it left no time for record-keeping, for writing the history of the end? Furthermore, the archaeological evidence of mass graves and abandoned cities suggests that the Maya did not simply disappear from the land. The collapse of the great city-states of the Maya region appears to have been a complex process that involved not just the abandonment of urban centers, but also the dispersal of the people themselves. Could the survivors have fled into the surrounding jungle, starting anew in smaller, less elaborate communities, carrying with them the knowledge of their ancestors, but leaving behind the trappings of their once great civilization? The missing chronicle of the first Maya collapse may not just be an absence of written records. It may also be a reflection of something more profound. Perhaps it speaks to the very nature of the Maya worldview, which saw time as cyclical, with periods of creation, destruction, and rebirth. In this context, the collapse of the Maya civilization could have been viewed not as a final end, but as a transition, a necessary clearing away of the old to make room for something new. If this is true, then perhaps the Maya themselves saw no need to record the collapse, for they understood it as part of a larger, eternal cycle of change. As we reflect on the disappearance of the chronicles of the first Maya collapse, we are left with many unanswered questions. Could the Maya have purposefully erased this chapter of their history, choosing to leave only the traces of their triumphs? Or was this a natural loss, the inevitable result of the passage of time? The answers remain elusive, but the story of the Maya collapse continues to inspire intrigue, pushing us to dig deeper into the past to uncover what might still be hidden beneath the ruins of their once great cities. What secrets have been lost forever, and what might we still be able to uncover in the vast, tangled jungles of Central America? As we continue our journey through history's most tantalizing mysteries, we arrive at a civilization whose capital remains lost to time, an enigma that has puzzled historians, archaeologists, and explorers for centuries. The Hittites, who ruled over vast swaths of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, in the 2nd millennium BC, left behind monumental archaeological sites, including their capital, Hattusa. But there is another capital, an unknown counterpart to Hattusa, that has eluded discovery, a place believed to be the heart of their rivals, the mysterious kingdom of the Kaskians. The story of this lost city challenges everything we think we know about ancient Anatolian geopolitics, and its fate remains one of the most intriguing unsolved puzzles in the ancient world. The Kaskians, a people whose existence is mentioned in various ancient sources, were thought to be a confederation of tribes living in the mountainous regions to the north and east of the Hittite heartland. Little is known about them beyond the sparse historical records that mention their interactions with the Hittites. The Kaskians were a formidable rival to the Hittites, and they engaged in frequent conflicts over control of trade routes, territories, and resources. The question that remains unanswered, however, is where the capital of this powerful and enigmatic civilization stood. It is believed that the Kaskian capital was not only a military and political center, but also a cultural hub, whose architecture and urban planning might have mirrored that of the Hittites themselves. But despite extensive exploration in the region, the capital city has never been found. In the hills and valleys of eastern Anatolia, near the borders of modern-day Turkey and Armenia, the remains of ancient settlements dot the landscape. These ruins are often shrouded in mystery, offering tantalizing hints of civilizations long forgotten. Among them, the Kaskians are the most elusive. They were a formidable force, able to stand up to the mighty Hittites, yet no grand city has ever been definitively linked to them. Over the years, archaeologists have uncovered a handful of ancient fortifications and artifacts that suggest the Kaskians built impressive structures, yet no remains of their capital have been discovered. Was it a city of stone and mud, buried beneath centuries of erosion and conquest? Or was it a city that simply never existed in the way we imagine ancient capitals? What we do know about the Kaskians comes from Hittite texts. The Hittites referred to them as a barbarian people, though this term was likely more of a political label than a reflection of their true nature. According to these sources, the Kaskians lived in fortified mountain strongholds, with the Hittites describing their capital city in terms that suggest it was a place of power, an urban center that rivaled Hattusa in both strategic importance and political influence. Yet, even as these cities were mentioned in the Hittite annals, their precise locations remained a mystery. The Kaskian capital was likely located somewhere in the rugged mountain ranges of eastern Anatolia. The harsh geography of the region, with its dense forests and steep cliffs, could have been the perfect natural defense for a powerful kingdom. Could the capital have been hidden so well that it remains undiscovered, lying somewhere beneath layers of earth, untouched by time and human activity? It is certainly a possibility, especially considering the ancient Kaskians' preference for seclusion in the natural labyrinths of the Anatolian mountains. The search for the Kaskian capital has led archaeologists to several intriguing sites in the region. Some have speculated that it might lie beneath the modern city of Erzincan, while others suggest the vicinity of the Euphrates River, where several ancient cities have been uncovered. Yet, despite numerous excavations, no conclusive evidence has surfaced to pinpoint the exact location of the Kaskian capital. In fact, the more one digs into the history of the Kaskians, the more fragmented and elusive their story becomes. It's as if the city itself has been intentionally erased from history, leaving behind only hints and shadows of a once great civilization. Could it be that the Kaskians deliberately left no trace of their capital city? Perhaps the city was abandoned in such a manner that it was completely wiped from the historical record, its location known only to a select few who passed the knowledge down through generations. Or perhaps the capital was destroyed in a catastrophic event, such as an invasion by the Hittites themselves, that led to its complete disappearance, its ruins scattered across the rugged terrain and forever buried beneath the earth. Some researchers have even suggested that the Kaskians may have been more closely linked to the mysterious people of Urartu, a kingdom that flourished in the region long after the fall of the Hittites. Urartu, with its advanced culture and military prowess, might have inherited the legacy of the Kaskians, taking with it the knowledge of their great capital city. Could the Kaskian capital have been subsumed by Urartu, its history co-opted by another civilization that sought to claim the region for itself? Adding to the mystery is the possibility that the Kaskians may have intentionally left no monumental record of their civilization, no large-scale urban structures or monumental inscriptions that would have signified their capital's location. This is an idea that many modern scholars find compelling. The Kaskians were, after all, a people whose history was largely dictated by their relationship with the Hittites, a much larger and more powerful neighbor. Could they have been an isolated, perhaps even secretive people, whose capital was built in such a way that it never sought the limelight or grandeur typical of other ancient capitals? It's possible that the Kaskians' pride lay not in their cities, but in their ability to thrive in such a harsh and remote environment, with their identity maintained through cultural cohesion rather than architectural grandeur. Still, many questions linger. Was the Kaskian capital simply forgotten by time, lost to history in the shifting sands of war and destruction? Or is it waiting to be uncovered, buried beneath the remains of more recent civilizations, its secrets hidden in plain sight? If the Kaskian capital does exist, Could it one day emerge from the earth to reveal the untold story of a civilization that once stood at the threshold of greatness, only to fade into obscurity? The search for the lost capital of the Kaskians remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. As we ponder the fate of this elusive city, we are reminded of the countless other civilizations whose histories have been lost to the ravages of time. What secrets lie hidden beneath the soil of Anatolia, waiting to be uncovered? What might we still learn about the ancient world, if only we could find the keys to unlock its mysteries? For now, the Kaskian capital remains elusive, a tantalizing puzzle that invites further exploration and, perhaps, one day, revelation. In the dim corridors of ancient Egypt, beneath the weight of thousands of years of history, lies one of the most mysterious and enduring texts of antiquity, the Book of the Dead. Known by many as a guide for the soul's journey through the afterlife, this sacred manuscript has captivated the imagination of historians, archaeologists, and spiritual seekers for centuries. It contains a wealth of spells, prayers, and incantations designed to protect and guide the deceased, ensuring safe passage to the afterlife and a favorable judgment before the gods. Yet, despite its fame and importance, there are gaps within this ancient text, missing spells, sections of the scrolls, and unanswered questions about its original form. Among the most intriguing of these mysteries is the enigma of the missing spells of the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead was not a single book, but rather a collection of texts written on papyrus scrolls or inscribed on tomb walls, each tailored to the individual needs of the deceased. The spells contained within were designed to navigate the treacherous and often perilous journey through the afterlife, known in Egyptian belief as the duat. Some spells offered protection against hostile gods and demons, while others provided guidance to the soul in the form of powerful affirmations. These texts were highly personalized, reflecting the specific fears and desires of the individual, as well as the prevailing religious and cultural beliefs of the time. The oldest versions of the Book of the Dead date back to the New Kingdom period, around 1550 to 1070 BC, but the concept of the afterlife and the need for such a guide predates even this time, extending back to the Old Kingdom and the Pyramid texts. One of the most well-known and studied sections of the Book of the Dead is the famous spell 125, often called the weighing of the heart scene. In this spell, the heart of the deceased is weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart is lighter than the feather, the soul is deemed pure and worthy of entering the afterlife. But if the heart is heavy with sin, the soul faces annihilation by the terrifying goddess Ammit, a demoness with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lioness, and the hind legs of a hippopotamus. This scene is one of the most dramatic and enduring images from ancient Egyptian funerary art, but there is more to the Book of the Dead than the known spells and rituals. What makes the missing spells of the Book of the Dead so fascinating is the fact that they are not just absent by chance. They were once believed to exist and were consciously left out of many surviving copies of the text. Historians and scholars have long debated what these missing spells might have been, and what they could tell us about ancient Egyptian views on death and the afterlife. Where did they go, and why were they lost? One theory revolves around the idea that the missing spells were not erased or forgotten, but intentionally omitted from later versions of the Book of the Dead. The religious practices of ancient Egypt were fluid, constantly evolving over time. As the priesthoods gained more influence, they may have selectively edited the spells to reflect the changing religious landscape. Some spells, which may have involved lesser-known deities or practices, may have been deemed too arcane or obscure to include in the more standardized versions of the text. Others might have been deliberately excluded to maintain the secrecy of certain rituals, or to protect sacred knowledge from being misused. Another possibility is that the missing spells were simply never included in the surviving copies of the Book of the Dead that we have today. Ancient Egyptian texts were typically copied by scribes, and it's possible that during the long centuries of transmission, certain spells were lost due to the fragility of the materials on which they were written. Papyrus, while durable for its time, is a perishable material, and many ancient scrolls have been lost to decay, fire, or theft. Could some of the most important spells have been among those that disintegrated or disappeared, leaving behind only fragments of the grand text? Then there's the intriguing possibility that the missing spells were never written down at all. Instead, they may have been part of an oral tradition, spoken or recited during specific rituals or ceremonies. In ancient Egypt, the spoken word held immense power. Priests and priestesses performed intricate rites and invocations, calling on the gods to protect and guide the souls of the deceased. These rituals may have been regarded as too sacred to be committed to writing, for fear that the power of the spell would be weakened. It's possible that some of the spells we now consider missing were never intended to be part of the written text, but were instead integral to the living tradition of ancient Egyptian funerary practices. Despite these various theories, there is still a vast gap in our understanding of what the missing spells might have entailed. Scholars have attempted to reconstruct lost portions of the text by comparing different versions of the Book of the Dead, often finding variations in the number of spells and the inclusion of certain incantations. The Papyrus of Ani, one of the most famous and well-preserved examples of the Book of the Dead, contains a comprehensive collection of spells, but even it is incomplete. Some fragments of other versions suggest that the original corpus may have contained over 200 spells, many of which have been lost over time. The presence of gaps, or missing spells, may also point to something deeper within the text itself. The Book of the Dead was not merely a practical guide for the deceased, but also a deeply spiritual and symbolic work, reflecting the complex worldview of the ancient Egyptians. Was the omission of certain spells a reflection of the transition in Egyptian religious thought over the centuries? Were there particular mystical rites or divine names that became taboo, either due to political changes or religious reformations, that would have once played a crucial role in the soul's journey? Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the missing spells is the notion that they could reveal a more intimate, hidden side of ancient Egyptian spirituality. The Book of the Dead that we know today is a public document in many ways, available for study and interpretation by modern scholars. But what if the lost spells contained a more personal, esoteric, or even forbidden knowledge? What if they were part of an esoteric tradition, kept only for the pharaohs and elite, passed down through secret rituals that have not survived in any form? In addition to this, many believe that the missing spells may have had a more magical or ritualistic function than those preserved. The ancient Egyptians were well known for their belief in the power of words and rituals to shape reality. Words were not simply a means of communication, but were thought to possess inherent power. Could these lost spells have been too potent to be included in the public versions of the Book of the Dead? Were they reserved only for the most sacred and private ceremonies, performed in hidden temples or in the most secretive chambers of the royal tombs? Perhaps the biggest question surrounding the missing spells is the one that we may never be able to answer. What knowledge did they contain, and what role did they play in the broader tapestry of Egyptian religious life? Did they reveal hidden truths about the afterlife, secret incantations that could guide the soul in ways we cannot yet comprehend? Or were they simply forgotten fragments of a bygone time, lost to the winds of history, never to be recovered? As we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, the missing spells of the Book of the Dead remain a profound puzzle, one that tantalizes the imagination and beckons us to look deeper into the hidden world of ancient Egypt. What is still buried beneath the sands, awaiting discovery? What secrets lie forgotten in the darkness of the tombs, waiting for a future generation to uncover them? The answers may be lost, but the mystery continues to draw us closer, ever searching for a truth that may remain forever elusive. In the vast stretches of the Sahara Desert, beneath the ever-shifting dunes and forgotten ruins, lies one of the most enduring mysteries of ancient Africa: the disappearance of the kingdom of Zanata. This once thriving civilization, whose very existence was once thought to be nothing more than legend, has become a tantalizing puzzle for historians, archaeologists, and adventurers. And yet, despite the passage of centuries and the countless explorations that have sought to unravel its secrets, the kingdom of Zanata remains largely shrouded in mystery. Located somewhere in the expansive desert regions of North Africa, the kingdom of Zanata flourished during the early centuries of the Common Era, somewhere between the 4th and 7th centuries AD. Historical accounts mention Zanata as a powerful and wealthy kingdom, known for its trade routes, military might, and cultural influence. Yet, when the sands of time shifted, the kingdom vanished, leaving behind only whispers in the wind and fragments of stories from the distant past. To understand the enigma of Zanata, one must first consider what is known about its rise to prominence. The kingdom was said to be located along the ancient trade routes that connected the Mediterranean world with sub-Saharan Africa. These routes were the lifeblood of African empires, allowing for the exchange of precious resources such as gold, ivory, and salt. Zanata, positioned at the crossroads of these vital trading paths, would have had access to immense wealth and power, making it a formidable force in the region. Much of what we know about Zanata comes from the accounts of early Arab historians, who recorded their encounters with the kingdom during their expansion into North Africa. These historians speak of a kingdom ruled by a powerful dynasty, whose leaders were both feared and respected. The kingdom was known for its skilled cavalry and formidable defenses, as well as its impressive urban centers. But these accounts are vague, and many of the details about Zanata's people, culture, and political structure remain unknown. Perhaps the most tantalizing aspect of Zanata's story is its sudden and inexplicable disappearance. By the 8th century, the kingdom had all but vanished from the historical record. Its cities, once bustling with trade and activity, were abandoned, and the people of Zanata seem to have disappeared without a trace. There is no clear explanation for what happened to the kingdom, leaving historians to speculate about its fate. One theory suggests that Zanata fell victim to the expansion of the Arab caliphates. As the Islamic Empire spread across North Africa, many indigenous kingdoms and cultures were either absorbed or destroyed. The Arabs had powerful military forces, and their control over the region could have led to the fall of Zanata. However, this theory is not without its contradictions. While the Arabs did indeed conquer vast parts of North Africa, Zanata was located in a remote area, far from the heart of the early Islamic conquests. It's unclear whether the kingdom could have been so easily overrun, given its military strength and strategic position along the trade routes. Another theory posits that Zanata fell victim to internal strife. It's possible that the kingdom's leaders became embroiled in power struggles, or that economic or social instability weakened the state. With no written records from the time of Zanata's fall, it is difficult to determine what forces may have been at play within the kingdom. Perhaps internal conflicts, such as rivalries between competing factions or challenges to the throne, led to the kingdom's downfall. But again, these are only speculations. There is no definitive evidence to support such claims. Yet another theory suggests that Zanata may have been abandoned due to environmental factors. The Sahara Desert, ever expanding and increasingly inhospitable, could have been a major factor in the kingdom's collapse. Over time, desertification could have made the land uninhabitable, forcing the people of Zanata to flee in search of more fertile lands. The kingdom's reliance on trade routes for survival would have also been disrupted by changes in the environment, such as shifting water sources or the encroachment of desert sands on the once thriving oasis settlements. Could a combination of these factors have led to the downfall of Zanata? It's possible. The kingdom's disappearance, however, remains one of the most puzzling aspects of its history. There are no surviving records from Zanata itself, no inscriptions, no written documents, and no monumental architecture that might reveal the kingdom's story. What we have instead are the words of ancient historians, whose accounts are often fragmented and incomplete. Their descriptions of the kingdom are tantalizing but ultimately insufficient for understanding the true nature of Zanata and its ultimate fate. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding Zanata is the question of its location. Despite the wealth of information available about the kingdom, no one has been able to pinpoint where it was actually situated. Some scholars have suggested that it may have been located near the modern-day city of Tamanrasset in Algeria, while others believe it could have been further to the east, near the borders of modern-day Libya or Egypt. The lack of definitive archaeological evidence makes this question even more perplexing. There have been numerous attempts to locate the remnants of Zanata. Expeditions have combed the desert in search of ancient ruins, hoping to uncover the traces of the lost kingdom. But so far, all efforts have been in vain. The sands of the Sahara have a way of swallowing up history, hiding it beneath layers of sand and stone. Is it possible that the kingdom's remains lie buried, waiting to be uncovered by future generations? Or has time and the elements erased all traces of this once great civilization, leaving nothing but a memory of what once was? Some researchers have proposed that the kingdom of Zanata may have merged with other, more established kingdoms over time. The rise of the Berber dynasties, who controlled much of North Africa during the Middle Ages, may have absorbed the people of Zanata into their own political and social structures. It's possible that Zanata's legacy was absorbed into the broader cultural and political framework of the region, leaving little trace of its original identity. The kingdom's people may have simply integrated into the larger societies of North Africa, their unique cultural practices and traditions fading into the background. But this theory, too, is speculative. The true fate of Zanata remains an open question, and as the years pass, the mystery only deepens. Was Zanata destroyed by war, consumed by environmental change, or lost to time and neglect? Could the kingdom have simply been forgotten, its story relegated to the realm of myth and legend? And if it was forgotten, was it truly the end of Zanata? Or could remnants of its culture, history, and people still be waiting to be discovered beneath the desert sands? As we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, the disappearance of the kingdom of Zanata serves as a reminder of the fragile nature of history. Empires rise and fall, cities are built and abandoned, and civilizations fade into the annals of time. But what remains of them? What stories are left untold? The kingdom of Zanata, with its vast wealth, military might, and cultural influence, may never be fully understood, but it stands as a testament to the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of history, waiting, perhaps, for the right discovery to bring them back to life. In recent years, advances in archaeological technology have renewed hope that answers about Zanata may still lie hidden beneath the desert surface. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and remote sensing tools have begun revealing ancient riverbeds, caravan routes, and buried settlements once thought lost forever. These technologies offer researchers new ways to investigate vast and previously inaccessible areas of the Sahara, raising the possibility that the remnants of Zanata's cities may one day emerge from beneath the sands. Equally important is the role of local oral traditions that continue to circulate among desert communities. Stories passed down through generations often speak of lost cities, abandoned wells, and forgotten caravan centers scattered across the desert. While such tales are difficult to verify, they sometimes preserve fragments of historical memory that guide modern investigations. In some cases, these oral histories have helped archaeologists locate ancient settlements previously unknown to science. The mystery of Zanata also reminds historians of how easily entire civilizations can disappear from collective memory. Without written records or surviving monuments, even powerful societies can fade into obscurity within a few centuries. Zanata's story illustrates the importance of preserving historical knowledge and protecting archaeological sites so that future generations can better understand humanity's shared past. For adventurers and scholars alike, the search for Zanata continues to inspire exploration across North Africa. Each new expedition, each newly discovered ruin, and each fragment of pottery or inscription brings researchers closer to understanding what truly happened to this lost kingdom. Even if Zanata itself is never fully uncovered, the pursuit of its story continues to expand our knowledge of the ancient Sahara and the people who once thrived there. Until definitive evidence is discovered, the kingdom of Zanata will remain suspended between history and legend, a symbol of the many secrets still buried within the world's great deserts. Perhaps one day, shifting sands or a chance discovery will reveal the truth, allowing Zanata to reclaim its place in the chronicles of ancient Africa. Until then, the kingdom endures in mystery, inviting future generations to continue the search for answers hidden beneath the dunes. The Arctic region, with its icy expanses and relentless cold, might seem an unlikely cradle for the development of a sophisticated trade network. And yet, nestled between the stark, frozen landscapes of Greenland and the northernmost fringes of the European continent, a mystery unfolds. A mystery that once held the promise of connecting the far reaches of the Norse world to markets both distant and diverse. The lost Arctic Norse trade route, as it has come to be known, is a subject of fascination and intrigue, embodying both the ingenuity and the ambition of a people who dared to build a civilization in one of the harshest environments on Earth. For centuries, the Norse people, Vikings, seafarers, and traders made their mark across Europe, the North Atlantic, and even as far as the shores of North America. Yet, the real mystery lies not in their known settlements, but in their forgotten trade routes that spanned the Arctic, connecting the Norse to a vast network of goods and cultures. The evidence for this elusive route is sparse, and much of what is known comes from accounts, fragments of archaeological finds, and the remaining footprints of ancient settlements that speak more to what was once possible than to what is still visible today. In Greenland, where the Norse established two settlements, the eastern and western settlements, there is a tantalizing glimpse of what may have been. During the medieval warm period, around the 10th to the 15th centuries, the climate was milder, and the Norse were able to thrive in the far north. Settlements dotted the coastline, and the Norse established farming communities, hunting outposts, and trading hubs, all built around the valuable resources they extracted from the environment. But what is not often discussed is the robust trading system that underpinned these settlements, a trade that may have spanned from the Arctic Circle to the Mediterranean and beyond. The first traces of this lost trade route were discovered in the mid-20th century, when archaeologists began uncovering evidence of exotic goods in Norse settlements. These goods, everything from European wine to Islamic ceramics, suggested that the Norse were not just isolated in their northern homelands, but were deeply connected to a web of trade extending far beyond their immediate geographical range. But how were these goods transported? How did they navigate the forbidding ice flows, storms, and currents of the Arctic? Historians believe that the Arctic Norse trade route might have followed a route that linked Greenland and Iceland to the northern reaches of Norway, and perhaps further to the markets of the Baltic and the Mediterranean. One of the most convincing pieces of evidence for such a route lies in the discovery of luxury items such as Islamic glass and silver in Greenland, items that could only have come from the distant markets of the Middle East. The Norse were known to have traded in furs, walrus ivory, and even slaves, all of which were in high demand across Europe and Asia. And as the Norse increasingly came into contact with other cultures, it seems they were able to build a trade route that crossed the frozen expanse of the Arctic. But what happened to this trade route? Why does it seem to have disappeared from the historical record, leaving behind only faint traces of its existence? Some historians suggest that the route may have simply become impractical over time. As the climate began to cool again at the end of the medieval warm period, the sea ice in the Arctic thickened, making it more difficult for ships to navigate the northern seas. The fading of this trade route might therefore have been a victim of environmental change, a cold, silent end to a once thriving economic network. The more speculative theory, however, suggests that the trade route may have been deliberately abandoned or lost due to a combination of external pressures and internal strife. By the time the 15th century rolled around, Norse settlements in Greenland were already in decline. The Western settlement, in particular, suffered from a series of challenges: dwindling resources, harsh winters, and pressure from indigenous Inuit groups. Some historians argue that these pressures may have forced the Norse to abandon their settlements entirely, taking with them the knowledge of the trade route and leaving it to fade into obscurity. Interestingly, there is another theory that suggests the disappearance of the Norse trade route was linked to an even greater mystery: the sudden collapse of the Norse settlements in Greenland. The cause of this collapse remains a subject of intense debate among historians, but some have speculated that the decline of the settlements was a direct result of their failure to adapt to the changing environment. With the onset of the Little Ice Age, farming became increasingly difficult, and the once thriving Norse settlements may have been rendered unsustainable. If this theory holds, then the loss of the Arctic Norse trade route could have been tied to the same forces that brought about the fall of Greenland's Norse colonies, a kind of parallel disappearance. Yet, even as historians piece together these fragmented clues, there are still many who believe that the Arctic Norse trade route might not have disappeared entirely. Could it be that remnants of this trade network still exist, hidden beneath the ice or lost in the historical gaps? Some researchers suggest that the Viking voyages, particularly those of the great Norse explorer Leif Erikson, may have taken them even further than we know, perhaps even to the Americas and beyond. The possibility that the Vikings, long celebrated for their seafaring abilities, may have charted unknown territories still tantalizes scholars and adventurers alike. The most fascinating clue, however, may lie in the unexplained and often mysterious artifacts found along the northern coasts. In Greenland, sites like the Viking farmstead of Brattahlid, once the residence of Eric the Red, have yielded clues about the Norse presence in the Arctic. But strange objects, such as early examples of European metalwork, Mediterranean ceramics, and even items from the Islamic world, raise questions. Were these goods part of a far-reaching network of trade, or did they simply arrive as part of a temporary cultural exchange? The presence of such items along the coastlines of Greenland and Iceland suggests that, at least for a time, the Arctic was not an isolated outpost, but part of a much larger, interconnected world. As modern-day explorers, archaeologists, and historians continue to search for more clues about the lost Arctic Norse trade route, the question remains: what truly happened to the Norse trade system, and what secrets might still lie buried beneath the ice and snow of the Arctic? Did environmental changes force the Vikings to abandon their trade routes, or did they retreat from the Arctic world altogether, leaving behind only the barest remnants of their legacy? Could the missing links in the Viking trade routes still be out there, waiting to be uncovered? The Arctic Norse trade route is a mystery that refuses to be fully solved. With each new discovery, the legend grows more complex, more tantalizing, and more elusive. But one thing remains certain: this forgotten trade network is one of the great unsolved mysteries of history. What more lies hidden beneath the vast frozen reaches of the Arctic? And will we ever fully understand the true extent of the Norse Empire in the far north? Only time and perhaps more discoveries will tell. In recent decades, new technologies have begun to reshape the search for evidence of Arctic Norse navigation and trade. Satellite mapping, underwater archaeology, and ice core studies now allow researchers to reconstruct ancient coastlines and shipping conditions with greater precision. These tools are revealing how shifting sea levels and changing ice patterns may have influenced Norse voyages, offering new insights into how these routes once functioned and why they ultimately became unsustainable. Equally significant is the growing understanding of how adaptable the Norse actually were. Archaeological studies show that Norse settlers in Greenland blended farming with hunting and trading, adjusting their way of life to survive in extreme conditions. Their interactions with indigenous Arctic peoples may have included not only conflict, but also exchange of knowledge, technologies, and survival strategies, which could have supported trade efforts longer than previously believed. Some scholars now suggest that the so-called lost trade route may not have disappeared suddenly at all. Instead, it may have gradually shifted southward as climate conditions worsened, redirecting commerce toward more navigable Atlantic routes. Over generations, memories of the Arctic passages may simply have faded, as newer maritime pathways replaced them in importance. There is also increasing interest in the role that economic change in Europe may have played. As demand patterns shifted and new trade centers rose in prominence, the expensive and risky Arctic voyages may have become less profitable. Merchants and seafarers might have chosen safer, more reliable routes, leaving the northern passages to slip quietly out of regular use. Still, the Arctic continues to yield surprises. Occasional discoveries of Norse artifacts in unexpected locations hint that exploration and exchange in the far north may have been more extensive than surviving records suggest. Each new excavation or coastal survey brings fresh clues, suggesting that parts of this trade system remain hidden beneath ice, ocean sediments, or remote shorelines yet to be fully explored. Ultimately, the story of the Arctic Norse trade route reflects the broader saga of human ambition at the edge of the known world. The Norse pushed the boundaries of navigation and settlement farther north than many thought possible, weaving distant lands into a network of exchange. Whether the full story is ever uncovered or not, the mystery endures, an enduring testament to humanity's drive to explore, trade, and survive even in the planet's most unforgiving environments.